Let's get it, 580 Sports Talk on a Monday afternoon in the capital city on the sports voice of Kansas. Welcome into Super Bowl week. The week before the Kansas City Chiefs take aim at NFL history, trying to become the first team ever to win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. 6 days away, Super Bowl 59, Chiefs, Eagles, New Orleans. Chiefs going for their 5th Lombardi trophy of all time and their unprecedented 3rd in a row. And we're talking all about it all week long here on 580 Sports Talk on 580 WIBW FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com. And on our video stream, you can check us out in living color on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk. Subscribe today if you have not already. 580 Sports Talk on YouTube, WIBW News, where you can watch us on Facebook. Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis here with you this week. Brendan Dworzinski is off all week, so it'll be just the two of us, but we can make it if we try, and it's not as though there's a shortage of things to talk about on Super Bowl week for the Kansas City Chiefs. It is still 6 days out, and of course, we're going to be dissecting the game on every possible level. But what do we know on Super Monday? What do we know? Or at least, I wouldn't even say what do we think we know. What do we know on the Monday before the Super Bowl? I'm going to talk about what I know about this upcoming matchup between the Chiefs and the Eagles that will be played again at the Superdome coming up on Sunday evening. I do want to hear from the listeners throughout the show. What do you know about this matchup? What are you certain of? What are you so certain of that there's no stat, there's no video breakdown, there's no anything that could convince you that you're wrong from now until Sunday? What do you know about Super Bowl 59? One thing I do know is this is not going to be a game where experience in big games is going to be a significant edge in the Chiefs' favor, because certainly the Chiefs have played more big games, but this Eagles team is a little more similar to their Super Bowl runners-up from 2 years ago than you might realize. And in fact, both teams are working with about the same number of guys who are important contributors to their rosters this season that will be playing in their first Super Bowl. So we'll discuss something that is usually a factor that I don't know will be a factor coming up on Sunday night. Also, to talk Super Bowl and all other NFL happenings, we'll welcome in Matt Verderame at the bottom of this hour, our NFL Insider from Sports Illustrated, SI.com. Also, That Football Show on the KC Sports Network and his own subscriber-only Patreon, the Matt Verderame Show. Matt, by the way, has put out, or did put out last week, a comprehensive list, the 50 greatest games of the Super Bowl era, ranked from 50 all the way down to 1, a blue ribbon panel of experts ranking the games, lots of familiar names weighing in, either with personal memories of watching or covering the game or personal memories of playing in the game. It's a great piece. It's at SI.com. Matt Verderame was the engine behind putting it all together. So we're going to talk a little bit about his list, too. Don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't read it all the way through, but you should go check it out. Consider it a companion piece to today's segment with Matt at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour here on 580 Sports Talk. The 50 greatest games of the Super Bowl era. It's in 2 parts. Part 1 is 50 to 26. Part 2 is 25 to 1. Don't believe there's a paywall or anything. So if you want to read it, you can read it. Sports Illustrated, SI.com. So obviously a lot of football to get to today, but there is also a lot of college basketball to get to today. First, the good. K-State basketball is so back, folks. They are levels of back that were previously unforeseen, previously unheard of levels of back for the Tang Gang. K-State basketball goes into Hilton Coliseum as 16.5-point dogs and they win by 19. And let me tell you, I watched the whole thing. Nothing about it was an accident. They were better. They out Iowa Stated Iowa State at Hilton Coliseum. And I am as startled by it as everyone else. Most of the major college basketball writers refer to it as the most shocking result of the college basketball season so far. I find that hard to disagree with, but it's of a piece with the way Jerome Tang's Wildcats have played of late. And instead of looking big picture about the disappointment that's in their past and the likelihood or unlikelihood of reaching the NCAA tournament, this Kansas State team seems to be, if you may forgive the well-worn cliche, taking things one game at a time. And if you take things one game at a time long enough, you put together enough one-game winning streaks, you might get to where you want to go after all. So we're going to talk about that K-State win, because that was awfully impressive. And the one thing I think, the lesson that Jerome Tang had to learn that took him a little longer to get to with this team than it did 2 seasons ago, for reasons that I think were both in and maybe largely out of his control. But Jerome Tang got there with this team, and this team is now thriving as a result. And we will talk about that. The absolute flip side in terms of lately their results, but also their vibes, Kansas, for 2 straight Saturdays, has lost a game that should have been impossible to lose. Not in terms of caliber of competition or going on the road. It's very possible to lose to KU. I mean, or for KU to lose in Waco to Baylor. I mean, you saw them do it. You've seen them do it every trip for the last 5. Not unthinkable to lose in a vacuum, but unthinkable to lose in the position that they were in, up 21 at half. And boy, if you watched the first half, you probably didn't think you had to watch the second half. There was such a gulf in class between KU and Baylor those first 20 minutes. And then Baylor lost their best player early in the second half, and it didn't matter. Baylor reeled KU back in and beat them by double figures. And at the end of the day, people are going to dogpile on Bill Self for this, and that's what he signed up for. It's why he makes the big bucks. He's the coach. I don't think Bill Self forgot a coach. I just don't think this team is very good. And I think at the end of the day, what we are seeing is the end of the Imperial Era of Kansas basketball. And I'll explain what I mean by that, because that doesn't mean, oh, Kansas basketball's just another program now. No, they're still a blue blood. Oh, Kansas basketball will never be great again under Bill Self. They'll never reach the heights that they reached before. No, that's not what I think at all. But there was an era of Kansas basketball that we knew and we watched and we bore witness to, and it's over now. And that happens to every blue blood program. Duke and North Carolina and UCLA and Indiana and Kentucky, and some of those programs never pull their way out of it, or still haven't pulled their way out of it to date, looking at you, Indiana. But it is undeniable that the Imperial Era of Kansas basketball is over. And we will talk about that. And we will also discuss the fact that great teams, or really all teams take on the personalities of their best player, why that's a bad thing for Kansas this year. So we're going to get to that as well. Plenty of college hoops on today's program. We'll also look ahead. I mean, we're going to be talking about both of these teams. Big Monday tonight at Allen Fieldhouse. I don't know if I am going or not yet. It is it is dependent on the health and the fussiness or lack thereof of a 7-month-old, near 8-month-old who lives in my house. But I may be there, I may not, but a lot of people are going to be there. Be 15,000 strong, give or take a few, at Allen Fieldhouse for Big Monday tonight. And it's not just Big Monday, it is Desperation Monday for KU and Iowa State. Because Iowa State doesn't want to lose 3 in a row. And KU can't fathom the thought of losing 3 conference road games in the same season. Something's got to give. Neither team playing particularly well. Somebody's going to get right tonight. Who's it going to be? We'll get to that later in the show. Plus, everything you've come to know and love from a Monday edition of 580 Sports Talk. We'll have our headlines, top of the 5 o'clock hour. Not many of them. Not many worth talking about. But we will get to some headlines. We will get to what is wrong with you, starting a new week of that. We got good, bad, ugly from the sports weekend that was as well. And your thoughts, your comments, your questions, your concerns, your rantings and ravings shared with the program. We invite and encourage you to interact today. The text line is open, 785-272-9429. That is 785-272-9429. Can also get at me on the YouTube chat. The chat room is open on our YouTube stream, which, again, you can find on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk. Search for 580 Sports Talk on YouTube. And there is a live chat window when you are watching us in the browser or on your mobile app, and you can jump on in, interact with yours truly and Spencer, and interact with the fellow listeners to the show as well. Good morning and good afternoon. Not good morning. Long night for your boy last night. One of those that you kind of have to charge the game when you got an infant in the house. But good afternoon to Mark and Ryan and Trevor and Tyler and Vance for checking in, and look forward to the rest of you folks jumping on in the YouTube live chat. If you've never done it before, jump in. The water's fine. Watch us on YouTube, 580 Sports Talk. You're at work, you're tuned in. Why don't you jump on in and say hello and enjoy the live chat opportunity. All right, let's get into it. Super Week, right? The Chiefs are playing in it for a fifth time in 6 years. It's almost hard to think about what it would be like to go into Super Bowl week and the Chiefs aren't a part of it. Right? Like it's almost feels status quo at this point, that this week, the Chiefs, Kansas City, the Kingdom, one half of the center of the sports universe. Chiefs arrive safely in New Orleans. All of the hoopla, foofara, whatever you want to call it, still to come this week before the Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Eagles. And you're going to read some great previews. You're going to watch some interesting tapes. And that's what I was doing a lot of over the weekend. I read Aaron Schatz over at FTN. He had a stat preview of the Super Bowl, and watched a clip from inside the NFL. Bill Belichick was doing tape about the Chiefs offense against the Eagles defense. It's only natural to devour as much as you possibly can about this matchup, getting yourself prepared as a fan, as a ball knower for watching Super Bowl 59. But I wanted to back it up real quick before we get started really digging into the ins and outs and the X's and O's of a second Super Bowl meeting between the Chiefs and the Eagles in 3 years. I wanted to pose this question. What do you know you know? What are the things about this matchup that you're so sure of, you can't be talked back from that particular opinion or belief in this game? Yours are welcome to be submitted. Again, get at us on the YouTube live chat or text the program 785-272-9429. What do you know about this matchup? There's not a lot that's fundamentally different about these two teams from Super Bowl 57 to Super Bowl 59, to be completely honest. The Eagles have a better running back, maybe a little less pass rushing depth, and a better secondary. The Chiefs probably have a little bit more pass rushing depth. I think they have a little bit more wide receiver depth. I think they have a bit more of a power running threat in short yardage than they did 2 years ago. Oh, and they have a healthier Patrick Mahomes, and that's not a small thing either. So there are some things that are different, but broadly speaking, the strengths and the weaknesses of the Chiefs and the Eagles are pretty similar to what they were going into Super Bowl 57. So what do you know? Here's what I know. Here's what I know going into this matchup. I know two things. And I'll save the second thing for last, because it might just be the thing that once we've turned over every rock and hunted in every nook and cranny for the statistic or the tendency that will define this game. It might just be as simple as one thing. And I'll hold that back because I know that one thing is true. But here's the other thing I feel like I know about Super Bowl 59. I know what it will look like if the Eagles win. I know what has to happen for the Philadelphia Eagles to raise their second Lombardi trophy in franchise history and deny the Chiefs that historic three-peat. I know what that has to look like. It has to be a monster game from Saquon Barkley, and it has to be a significant edge in the turnover department. Do you realize that the Eagles are plus 10 in the turnover margin in the playoffs so far and have not committed a turnover of their own? That's true. They are plus 10 in the turnover margin. They were plus 4 in the wild card game against the Packers, where they got outgained and won anyway because they were plus 4 in turnovers. They were plus 2 against the Rams. A couple of back-breaking fumbles in the snow in the second half in that game that saw them get outgained and, well, win anyway because they were minus 2 or plus 2 in turnovers. Then they were plus 4 against the Commanders, and they outgained the Commanders, and I think they would have won that game regardless of what the turnover margin looked like, but certainly the turnover margin being what it was, and Saquon Barkley being what he was in that conference championship game were why it ended up 55-23. And Barkley, who's been terrific all season, has really leveled up in the last 2 playoff games. He is averaging over his last 41 carries nearly 8 yards per rush. 26 for 205 against the Rams, 15 for 118 against Washington, and 5 combined touchdowns in the last 2 games. I have a hard time believing that the Eagles can win a game where those things don't happen for them because they needed those 4 turnovers against Green Bay. They needed those 2 turnovers, really needed those 2 turnovers against the Rams. And which passing attack was the best one they faced in those 3 games? It was definitely the Rams. It was definitely Stafford, right? At least their passing concepts. Again, this is where all of that film breakdown you tend to stumble upon this time of year. I watched a clip of Bill Belichick from Inside the NFL breaking down the Eagles defense, and the way that he showed the Rams have success against the Eagles defensively, a lot of in-breaking routes, a lot of working in the middle of the field. Does it sound like there's a quarterback and a group of wide receivers who are pretty good at that the Eagles might be seeing in 6 days at the Superdome? So I really kind of like that matchup for the Chiefs the more that I saw that. So I don't know that there's a universe where the Eagles don't benefit from short field at least a couple of times and don't get a big game from Saquon Barkley and that they win anyway. I don't know that I see a way that happens. The Saquon Barkley was really good in every game this year except for 2. He was not good against Cleveland back on October 13th. He had his lowest yards per carry of the season in that game. 18 rushes for just 47 yards against a pretty good Cleveland defense. A Cleveland defense that might not be as good next year. We'll get to why in headlines. But Eagles still won that game. A big part of the reason that they won that game was they were playing against a nasty man. Barkley also not awesome against the Steelers back on December 15th. Averaged just 3.5 yards per carry, 19 rushes for 65 yards. But the Eagles won that game too. Those teams, though, are not the Chiefs. Right? We can agree on that. Those teams are not the Kansas City Chiefs. Against a truly great opponent, the Eagles are going to need something special. I feel like I know that about this matchup, that the Eagles' winning recipe involves a big day for Barkley and a big plus in the turnover department. And look at the Bills. The Bills have been a huge plus in turnovers all season long. They were +1 in the AFC Championship game. That wasn't enough. I don't think +1 is enough. I think the Eagles need to dominate that statistic That is their recipe for winning. Here's the other thing I know about this matchup. And like I said, it might be the only thing to know. It really might. It really might be this simple. Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. And if the dust settles and the Chiefs are raising the Lombardi Trophy on Sunday, which again is my expectation, it might just come back to this. It might just come back to this. But this is what I know. I know the Chiefs have the better quarterback and the better coach. I know that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes versus Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, with respect to what Sirianni and Hurts have accomplished in the NFC over the last 3 seasons, really over the last 4, with respect to that, it's not close. The advantage at head coach and the advantage at quarterback are significantly in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs. And that might be the only thing that anyone needs to know. But of course, we're going to spend the rest of today, we're going to spend the rest of the week, and we're going to go all the way up to Sunday at kickoff, turning over all those rocks, trying to find the number, trying to find the defining trend or characteristic that will swing this game. And it might just be as simple as the Chiefs have the coach and the Chiefs have the quarterback. And that might be why they win. We'll get to yours in a little bit here on 580 Sports Talk. What you know about Super Bowl 59. We're going to get to yours in a little bit. We'll take a timeout and come back with the good, the bad, the ugly from the sports weekend that was. We got Matt Verderame, our NFL Insider, going to join us here in about 10 minutes or so. We got lots of college basketball to get to today. Lots more Chiefs on this Super Monday ahead of Super Bowl 59. Your text, 785-272-9429. Your comments in the YouTube live chat. We are just getting started on this Monday edition of 580 Sports Talk. It's good, the bad, the ugly from the weekend that was. We don't necessarily narrow it down to sports. All of mine just happen to be sports related this week. My good, Kansas State's win on Saturday is my favorite win of the Jerome Tang era. You may have a different answer for that. If you're a diehard K-Stater, you might point to the Sweet 16 win over Michigan State 2 years ago. You might point to any of the showdown wins over KU at Bramlage. Going to Hilton Coliseum, which was a cauldron on Saturday, they do not like Kansas State, and they do not like Jerome Tang. Remember last year, the whole cameras on the sideline allegation that Tang leveled at Iowa State, and that ridiculous-looking person that looked like a leathery Jim Carrey screaming at Jerome Tang the whole time. K-State walked in there, and they punked Iowa State. They out-Iowa Stated Iowa State. Extremely satisfying to watch that happen to TJ Otzelberger's merry band of unethical hoopers. I enjoyed it very much. That was my good. Spencer Dupuis, what was your good this weekend?
Can I add to your good?
Sure.
The funniest part about it was I saw on Twitter that right below the media area is the student section, I think.
Yes. Students
and
are right on top, yeah.
And they're making fun of Jerome Tang pointing their cell phone, like they were all pointing their cell phones at the court or something. And then K-State just went in and just turned that whole situation around. It was funny to see that on Twitter.
I bet.
My good finally got out to a Washburn game, and it was two great games. Saw the second half of the women's game. They won 85-78, and the men, I think they're going to the national championship. I mean, it was just some phenomenal basketball. They won by 33 points on Saturday. And about the women, seeing them for the first time in person since the first game, I mean, they look like a totally different team that's not a very young team. Like, they don't have any seniors. They weren't expected to compete very much so in the MIAA, and they're putting up solid efforts, I think, game in and game out, and the men just – I'm in awe at how they play.
21-0 for the Washburn men, still the only unbeaten in Division II men's basketball. They'll remain number one for another week. They put UNK in the dumpster on Saturday. Absolute domination for the Bods, man. And yeah, that's good win for the women, getting back to 500 in league play. My bad. Second straight Saturday, KU's tricked off a game they had no business losing. Not based on opponent or based on atmosphere, location, any of that. You have a 21-point halftime lead. You don't lose those. And KU had never blown a lead of that magnitude before Saturday in Waco. And it was stunning to watch. Even Fran Fraschilla, who normally goes out of his way to try and be complimentary and not use words that really get at the heart of the matter. He's not trying to rip anybody. That's not really Fran, except for the one time he absolutely undressed Cartier Jada on a K-State broadcast. God, when would that have been? 6 years ago now? Man, it was so stunning that it came from Fran Fraschilla of all people. Anyway, neither here nor there. Fran Fraschilla called it a collapse, so that's what it was, and that was my bad. Spencer, what was your bad?
Trying to get ready to move. Just
that's rough.
Not knowing where to start. Like, my girlfriend was packing stuff yesterday, and I was like, I just don't. And then we started watching the Grammys, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get up and start packing. So half of my clothes are packed. Hopefully it doesn't get really warm and I don't need shorts in the next week. That was also my ugly because I hate packing.
Yeah, it's never fun. My ugly, Arizona State basketball got real chippy at the end, and Arizona State's coach, Bobby Hurley, pulled his reserves, sent him to the locker room before the end of the game, left the court without shaking Tommy Lloyd's hand. Then after the game, he went off on this whole rant about how Arizona didn't win with class, and he's not going to vote for Caleb Love for all conference honors because they were doing too much talking. Dude, they didn't headbutt anybody like your guy did. God, the Hurleys are just I'm so sick of the Hurleys. Go pro already. You're a pox on college basketball, both you and your brother. That was embarrassing to say, well, they talked, they said mean things, and that's not classy. Nah, man, when you're winning and the other team talks, you know what you do? Take it. Go to the locker room. Take the high road, shower all that loser smell off of you, and get ready for your next game. Talk is just talk. It should roll right off your back if you're a competitor. You don't headbutt people and then say, well, the other team didn't have any class. Shut up. Shut up, Bobby Hurley. We got to take a break. Matt Verderame coming up next, Talk NFL on 580 Sports Talk. We are joined in the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline by Matt Verderame, our NFL insider from Sports Illustrated, SI.com. Also his own subscriber-only Patreon, The Matt Verderame Show, and That Football Show on the KC Sports Network. Matt joins us every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk. And Matt, obviously it's Super Bowl week, and we're going to get there, but I wanted to start first with the 50 greatest games of the Super Bowl era list that was published, that you played a big part in putting together and writing over at SI.com. I wanted to ask you how that came about and who you got to collaborate with on that project.
Yeah, thanks. It's in the magazine now for everybody who wants to check it out. It's also online, two-part series. And it came to be because last year I just wanted to do a big project and went to my editors and said, let's do a big top 50, something like that. And it turned into the most influential teams in NFL history, and went over well enough with the upper crust of the company that they said, all right, you're going to do another one. And so this year went with the 50 most memorable games of the Super Bowl era, had a 37-person panel to come up with that list, including huge names, Chris Berman, Bill Polian, Albert Breer, Amy Trask, on and on and on. I mean, a million people vote for the Hall of Fame. And so then once we got the list, I started calling up star players and coaches and got a quote from everyone or from one person involved in every single game. So anybody from Mitchell Schwartz and Bobby Bell to Dick Vermeil, Dan Fouts, Joe Namath, Larry Zonka, Drew Pearson, Randy Cross, Brent Jones, Ray Lewis, Ty Law. I think there's 17 or 18 Hall of Fame. Joe Green, Rocky Blyer. There's Dan Hampton. There's a ton in there. And you can hear from those players and coaches who were involved in those games exactly how they were thinking and feeling during it.
It's very cool, and it's a very fun read. I recommend everybody check it out. Again, it's online, si.com/NFL. Take you right to all the NFL content the magazine does, and it is in the print edition of the magazine you can find on newsstands. Matt, I won't spoil it. I want people to go read it themselves and see who got ranked number one. But how close were you to the consensus? What did you put at the top of your list?
So, if I remember correctly, this is a 9-month project. It's been a while.
Sure.
I think the number one game I had was the 1981 Chargers-Dolphins game. And then after that, had a couple other games that ended up being right at the top. Listen, the 81 Chargers-Dolphins game was high. It wasn't as high as I had it. But, if you're a Chiefs fan listening, there's not a lot of recency bias in this list. Like, there's a lot of games in the 60s, 70s, early 80s. There are, I think, 5 or 6 games involving Mahomes on the list. The Chiefs have played some wildly entertaining and important games in the last 6-7 years. So, it was a blast to talk to guys. I talked to Jamari Conner for it. I talked to Orlando Brown Jr. Like I said, Mitchell Schwartz. It really was a lot of fun to get the insights of some of these guys. And, it was a list that I think the top 10, most people in some order kind of had the same, but there were some games that people had 15th. Other people didn't even have on their list. So it was quite a task to put it all together. But in the end, I think we got it right, and it was a lot of fun to do it.
Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated, our NFL insider, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. All right, maybe you'll need rewrite if Super Bowl 59 ends up being a classic Super Bowl. Last one between the Eagles and the Chiefs. Again, I won't give it away, but it's on that list of the 50 most memorable games of the Super Bowl era. Here we go for Super Bowl 59 from New Orleans. And as you look ahead to this Sunday, what do you believe is going to be maybe the defining matchup or the most intriguing matchup for you in this game that might ultimately define who wins and who loses?
I've said this all week, all last week. I'm going to say it all this week. I think this game is very simple. If the Eagles can get home with 4, I think they win the game. And if they can't, I don't think they have any shot of winning this game. Like, to me, that's what this game is. Can Jalen Carter and Milton Williams and Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith, can they get home? Because they're going to have to. They have a very good secondary. The linebackers can cover. But none of that matters if you can't get to Mahomes. Mahomes he's great. He's an all-time great. It's like Brady. If you couldn't get to Brady, you could just pack your stuff up, get back in the bus and go home. Didn't matter. And it's the same thing in this game. The Eagles are probably going to limit the Chiefs running the football. The Eagles are probably going to run the ball pretty effectively themselves. I think the passing game for Philly is going to be hit and miss. Like Hurts will probably have a few nice throws in this game. I also think the Chiefs are pretty well equipped to deal with them in a lot of ways. They don't use the middle of the field. They're going to go after Watson and McDuffie. I think through the Chiefs, you're fine with that. But to me, this game is all about, look, if Philadelphia can get pressure consistently up front, they probably win the game. And if they can't, and Mahomes has got 2.5, 3 seconds to throw, it's a wrap. He's going to find somebody. And that's good. To me, the biggest matchup in this game is going to be Jalen Carter inside. Everybody's talked about Caliendo, but he doesn't line up over Caliendo. He is not like Chris Jones, who moves all over the place. He really is pretty much almost exclusively going to be over Trey Smith. And that's the game. Like, if Trey Smith stonewalls Jalen Carter, it's over. I just do not think, barring a disastrous game of turnovers and penalties, that the Chiefs will lose the game if the Chiefs can neutralize them up front.
Obviously, Saquon Barkley's had an outstanding season, maybe one of the great running back seasons ever, maybe the greatest running back season ever. I know I've seen some argue, and he's had 2 great playoff performances in the divisional round and in the NFC Championship. What gives the Chiefs a chance to, you don't stop a player that great, but to limit their impact on the game? What are the Chiefs' best shots to doing that?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is they're a great tackling team at all 3 levels. If you watch a lot of the runs of Barkley, and it takes nothing away, he's amazing. But he will break a tackle, get in the clear, then he's gone. The Chiefs are one of the best tackling teams in the NFL, probably the best tackling secondary in football, along with Philadelphia. They're probably the 2 best tackling secondaries. That's going to be a part of this game. There's going to be a time or two where he's going to get to the second level with a full head of steam. They're going to need Justin Reed to make a tackle. They're going to need McDuffie to square up, make a tackle. That's going to be part of this. And instead of the run being 50 yards, it's 10 yards, and you can live with it. That's part of it. I think another thing here is Spagnuolo. That is the one edge in this game that I feel like if the Chiefs win, we're all going to be sitting here on Monday going, yeah, no kidding, of course. That's like Kellen Moore. That offense is very talented. It is not very creative. The way they play, there's not a lot of motion. They don't use the middle of the field. It's very static the way they play. And so I look at this game and I'm like, look, if you can confuse them a little bit and give them some looks where they've got to think and they can't just fire off the ball, I think, like any team, it slows you down a little. And then the third thing is, look, I mean, is it one of these games where the Chiefs just come out firing offensively and they get up 14-3? Now, I don't think that's going to happen. Philly's very good defensively, but can they do that? A la the AFC title game a year ago, where the Chiefs scored 2 touchdowns immediately on Baltimore, and the Ravens got freaked out and going away from the run game, and that was it. Like, I don't expect that to happen, but that is one. Is there Andy in this game? Do you just say, look, we're going to go full tilt with our 30 best plays right out of the gate? Because if we can get up by a couple scores, we probably have a huge advantage in the game.
We're joined by Matt Verderame here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. And Matt, last week on the show, we talked about some mid-season or I guess post-training camp acquisitions for the Chiefs, being Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster, Samaje Perine. Of those group of 4 guys right there, who do you think is going to make the biggest impact in the Super Bowl and why?
My immediate inclination is to say Kareem Hunt, just because he's been really good for the Chiefs all year long. But there's been an ability by the Eagles this year to really shut down the run, and I just don't know if you're the Chiefs, you're going to bang your head against the wall running the ball in this game. Like, if you can't run the ball well early, I think you just turn the ball over to Mahomes and go, all right, go get it, and he's good. He's good enough to do it. I kind of feel like DeAndre Hopkins is the answer in this game. Like, the Eagles are very good in the middle of the field defensively. But Hopkins, you can move him around, and he's so smart, and he's so savvy. And maybe he has 1 catch for 10 yards. Like, that's totally on the board. I could also see him having 4 catches for 60 yards because he torches one of the younger corners, and he sets him up and makes a big play. The Chiefs have really made a living this year, and really throughout their dynasty, they just win in moments. They win in key spots. They have a 3rd and 8 or, in the AFC title game, a 3rd and 9. They get the perfect call for it. I wouldn't be surprised in this game if that perfect call goes to DeAndre Hopkins.
Couple more questions for Matt Verderame joining us here on 580 Sports Talk on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline, or NFL Insider from Sports Illustrated and SI.com. So ultimately, Matt, we'll get a prediction from you here, and then a couple other around the league things I wanted to ask your opinion about real quick. But first, what do you think happens? How do you think it unfolds? Who's going to win Super Bowl 59 and why?
I think in the end, I just think we're going to look at the game. Yeah, it's Mahomes. I mean, I feel like sometimes we do this tail of the tape thing. It's like, who's got better linebackers? They have Patrick Mahomes. That's the answer. Like, they have the answer, and I think sometimes you look at this game and, we can get too in the weeds with like, okay, well, this team ranks like X against the middle of the field. And this team ranks X in pressure rate. All that stuff matters. I just think in the end, I think the Chiefs can hold up in pass protection. I think in every Super Bowl they played elite pass rushers. The Eagles do not have an elite pass rusher. And Carter's terrific. He has 16 quarterback hits this year. Okay, he basically has the same numbers pressure-wise as Deshaun Watson has. He's great. Don't get me wrong, but like they don't have a great front four like they did 2 years ago, or the Niners with Bosa and Chase Young guys like this. They don't have that. I think the Chiefs can hold up in protection. I think if they do hold up in protection, I think Mahomes is going to pick them apart. I think the Chiefs win like 30-23. I could even see it being like 30-20. I think the Chiefs in this game, the Eagles are going to have to play perfect to beat them. And I think it's very, very hard to play perfect. And they could play perfect and still lose. I think Mahomes in this game, if he gets time, it may not be flashy, but I think it's going to be very effective.
All right, just a couple of more around the league questions for you, Matt, on this super week. Myles Garrett, star defensive end for the Cleveland Browns, today announced that he will be requesting a trade out of Cleveland. There are 31 teams that should be interested in a player of Garrett's caliber, but which team should bend over backwards the most to try and make that happen this offseason?
The Bills. I would do anything if I was Brandon Beane. Anything. His cap hit is nothing. His cap hit, because when you acquire a player in a trade, you're taking on their base salary. His base salary in the next 2 years, I think combined is like $2.5 million. I mean, anything. If I'm the Bills, other than giving them Josh Allen, who do you want? Okay, well, you want a first? Okay, great, not a problem. Look, if you're the Bills, you have an extra second round pick because of the Diggs trade. If memory serves me right, like, do you just call them up and say, all right, what's it going to take? Right? You have a history with this front office. You just traded for Amari Cooper. I've said forever, the Bills don't beat the Chiefs for one reason. They can't get home. In the playoffs, they just cannot get to Mahomes. They have 5 sacks in 4 games against them in the playoffs. If I'm Buffalo, and you're right, look, every team in the league should call. Okay, but if I'm the Bills, what is it going to take? You want a first, a second, and I don't know. I mean, pick the player. Again, if it's not Josh Allen, great. Here you go. Like you want Teron Johnson. I have all the respect in the world for Teron Johnson, but like, come on, it's not even a conversation. At some point, I just think if you're Buffalo, if it's him, if it's Max Crosby, I would do anything. The hard thing for them is their cap is a disaster, partially because of Von Miller's contract. But yeah, listen, if you're anybody in the league who has any designs on winning in the next couple of years, yeah, I mean, you make that call. You make a real offer.
Matt Verderame covers the National Football League for Sports Illustrated, SI.com. Again, go read the 50 most memorable games in the Super Bowl era. Matt put it together. It's a labor of love. It reads as such, and it's great fun. So go check it out, SI.com. Check it out in the print edition of Sports Illustrated. Matt, we appreciate you joining us. Enjoy the Super Bowl. We'll talk to you next Monday.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.
That is Matt Verderame. We'll step aside for a quick timeout, come back, and wrap up this hour of 580 Sports Talk. Our thanks again to Matt Verderame for joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. Again, can't recommend enough his list, the 50 most memorable games of the Super Bowl era. You can check it out, Sports Illustrated, SI.com. It's online. We've dropped a link to it in the YouTube live chat. So if you're watching on the YouTube stream today, you can follow that link. Check it out. You can also find it in the print edition. Go pick up a print edition of Sports Illustrated. When was the last time you did that? And read Matt's work. Has put a ton of time, put a ton of effort, had a great panel putting that together, and really reads well. What's your number one? If you had a greatest game, most memorable game of the Super Bowl era, what would be number one for you?
Ooh, it's a good one. I guess it's got to be one that I watched.
Sure.
So as much as I want it to be a Washington game, I didn't see any of them.
Sure.
I think because it was probably one of the first ones where I was really into the Super Bowl, more of than just sitting there. It's got to be the Giants Patriots game.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I remember as a kid, everybody wanted to emulate the David Tyree catch.
Yeah.
Then what was it? Was that the same? Maybe was that the same one or the next one? No, I'm thinking of a different one. The feet inbounds catch by
Santonio Holmes.
No, the Giants.
Oh, Mario Manningham.
Yeah.
That was the 2011 game where they beat the Patriots.
I don't know. Those are just because
sure.
Those are like my first years where I'm really into the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm 11, 10, 11, 12.
That would be a good one to put high on the list. My two personal favorite games of all time are probably the 13 seconds game and the 2013 NFC Championship game, Seahawks 49ers. I think those are the two best football games I've ever watched. So those would be 1, 2 on my list in some order. Check out Matt's list today. It's really good. And again, we've got a link to it in the live chat on our YouTube channel right now, 580 Sports Talk. Coming up at the 4 o'clock hour, K-State is so back. KU is so over. And what is wrong with you coming up, too? That's all next on 580 Sports Talk.
Documents are state-specific and secure. Find your plan at trustandwill.com and use offer code RADIO now for 10% off. That's trustandwill.com, offer code RADIO. Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. Visit trustandwill.com for details.
Stay connected for news, sports, weather, and ag on the Voice of Kansas, FM 104.9, 580 AM, WIPW, Topeka.
Against both countries have now been put on pause after both seem to have bowed to what President Trump is demanding. Canada's Prime Minister says they're increasing resources to stop the flow of fencing into the U.S. with 10,000 frontline personnel. That's exactly what Mexico's president said she'd be doing at the southern border after her call with Trump. Trump said this before his call with Justin Trudeau.
Canada's very tough. They're very, very tough to do business with, and we can't let them take advantage of the U.S.
Tariffs on Chinese goods are set to go to place like the CDC. CBS News says the Trump administration wants U.S. aid to be merged into the State Department with a significant reduction in funding and cuts in the workforce. But it will be a humanitarian aid entity. Christina Dreyer is a speechwriter that's a contract with the agency.
I watched some people get fired, and I thought it was just it, and it turned out it was 60 senior people for USAID, and listen, I watched it happen, and that was just absolutely heartbreaking.
Salvage crews have recovered parts of the plane that sank to the bottom of the Potomac River last week after crashing with an Army helicopter. It's now on a barge. Army Corps of Engineer Colonel Francis Perez says they're still trying to identify a dozen more people who were on that flight.
Reuniting with lost in the trench recently is really what people are talking about.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy got a first-hand look at the crash site in Philadelphia, where a medical jet crashed Friday, killing all 6 people aboard and at least 1 person on the ground.
Whether it's the speed or location of the aircraft, we will be able to get some data, hopefully, off that device.
Several of the 24 people injured on the ground are still in the hospital. Thousands of FBI agents could be on the chopping block. It's all over their possible work in January 6th Capitol riot cases. Scott McFarland's covering this.
As many as 5,000 FBI employees are being subject to scrutiny, according to our latest CBS News reporting. And they had a mid-afternoon deadline to complete this questionnaire, surveying agents and employees for what roles they played in the January 6th riot investigation.
After her performance at the Grammys, Beyonce announces her Calvary Carter tour. The 22 tours kicks off April 28th in Los Angeles. She'll also perform in Chicago, D.C., and Paris. Trump's tariffs and Wall Street on a roller coaster. The Dow lost 122, the Nasdaq is down 245, S&P losing 44. This is CBS News.
A riddle brought to you by Progressive Insurance. What do your home and auto have in common? Progressive protects them both. It was an easy riddle. Learn more at progressive.com.
Kansas Information Network News. I'm Lisa Ruckman. The search is on for a suspect after 3 women were killed in a Kansas City shooting. Here's Brandon Dixon with the report.
Happened early Sunday morning in the area of Northwest 65th Street and Green Hills Road in the Northland. Police found the bodies of the victims in a home and are investigating this case as a homicide. They don't have any suspects in custody, but there's a subject of interest that cops say knows the victims. I'm Brandon Dixon.
2 people, including a child, are dead following a house fire in Hutchinson. The fire broke out early Saturday morning in the 1000 block of East 3rd Street, and crews found 1 adult and 1 child dead inside that home. A surviving child and an adult were taken to a hospital. The cause of that deadly fire is under investigation. This is Kansas Information Network News.
It used to seem like science fiction, stem cell therapy. For years now, Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center has been using this procedure to help people find relief from chronic pain. There are others out there who want to sell you stem cells from who knows where, but KRMC uses only your body's own stem cells because the safest, most effective source for these smart cells is you. Live the life you love. Contact Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center in Manhattan and Kansas City. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
I'm attorney Tyler Patterson. You've probably seen a lot of TV or billboard ads for attorneys you didn't know were in town. That's because they're not. When you call Patterson Legal Group, you're actually speaking to people in your community, not just a call center. At Patterson Legal Group, getting you all the money you deserve is our main goal. Call Patterson Legal Group today.
For half a century, glyphosate has affordably and effectively protected Kansas farmers' crops from invasive weeds. Without it, the impact would be felt beyond the fields, hitting Americans where it hurts, our wallets. That's why the Modern Ag Alliance advocates for farmers continued access to essential crop protection tools so food prices don't rise even more. Get the facts at controlweedsnotfarming.com. Paid for by the Modern Ag Alliance in support of Kansas farmers.
Here's your updated forecast on 580 WIBW. Highs around 60 this afternoon under partly cloudy skies. Northerly wind 10 to 15 miles an hour. Tonight, lows level off around 28. Daytime highs approaching cloudy skies expected. Most chance for drizzle Wednesday, high around 46, 42, sunshine mixed with clouds at times, 30. Meteorologist Kramer in the Capital Federal Weather Center. Currently, it's 51 degrees.
Stay connected with breaking news on WIBW.
Let's get it. Hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk on this Monday afternoon on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, and streaming on video on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, and on Facebook at WIBW News. I'm Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis is across the glass. Brendan Dworzinski is off this week. It is Super Week. Getting set for Sunday. The Chiefs go for the three-peat against the Philadelphia Eagles. You'll be able to hear the action right here on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9 on Sunday with Westwood One's pregame coverage beginning at 1 o'clock. So lots of pregame up until the kickoff at about 5:30 or so. Once again, a reminder that due to NFL broadcast agreements, we are unable to broadcast the Chiefs radio network for the Super Bowl. They are restricted to broadcasting on the flagship signal only in the home market. So other affiliates of the Chiefs radio network across the Midwest, including 580 WIBW, will be offering the Westwood One broadcast. And again, it's Kevin Harlan on the call. It's not a bad consolation prize. It truly is not. We miss Mitch as much as you folks, but Kevin Harlan ain't no silver medal, right? Like it's 1 and 1A as far as those radio calls go. But that is what we are able to offer you. That is an NFL decision that we have no part in. That is not our call. Unfortunately, we would love to bring you the Chiefs Radio Network broadcast. We just aren't able to contractually. So we will have the Westwood One coverage starting at 1 p.m. on Sunday. Kickoff is again scheduled about 5:30, give or take. You know, how long does the coin toss take, and how long does the anthem take, and how long does it take to honor the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominees, and all the stuff that happens now before the start of the Super Bowl. But
don't they bring out the Hall of Famers too?
They might. Maybe one of them flips the coin. Like, I don't know. They're always doing something new.
Yeah. I got a hypothetical for you.
Okay.
So in a couple of years, we will get a new broadcaster for television of the Super Bowl. ESPN will be able to broadcast in a couple of years.
Yeah. That ABC last did, I think it was Super Bowl 29 was the last Super Bowl ABC did. It was the 49ers and the Chargers. Not a great one to go out on. That one was over at the opening kickoff.
So, but that was when it was AB. I don't think they were together yet. I don't think Disney and ESPN were merged yet.
That is true. But
so you'll have the Super Bowl will be on NBC or ABC, excuse me. It will probably be on ABC with the it'll probably be simulcast on ESPN.
Sure.
ESPN2 will probably be the Manning cast. Do you think they'll do what they do with college and do like where you can get the radio calls over the TV?
That would be very cool. Yeah, the
because they've done that in the past where you can listen to the Alabama radio call.
Yeah, you go to ESPN Plus. There's a lot of like shoulder programming or alternate feeds, alternate broadcasts of the game. That will be very interesting because none of the other. I guess
they really can't. I mean,
there's not been an alternate. Like they didn't do they did a Nickelodeon Super Bowl broadcast last year, right? Like CBS had the Nickelodeon Super Bowl broadcast this last year.
Which means they'll probably do it on Disney.
So I would imagine that there
might how many different broadcasts could there be?
As many as their heart desires, or as many as are allowed in the contract, I guess. I mean, I think that's an interesting question. That will be maybe a way to consume the Super Bowl in a way that that we have never consumed it.
But if they did put the team's radio broadcasters, and the Chiefs were in it, I'd be watching Mitch.
I think I would too. I think I'd want to hear Mitch's call too, for sure. I think a lot of people would want to hear their home broadcasters call, and it's a neat thing that ESPN does for the college football playoff games. Anyhow, still to come on the program today, we'll get to some more Super Bowl, including a game where experience may not matter quite as much because there's not a gap, a gulf in experience. A lot of times there is when the Chiefs play these games. Not the case against these Philadelphia Eagles. We'll talk about why, how surprisingly similar these rosters really are. We've also got a lot of 580 Sports Talk headlines to get to. Really, there are like 4 big ones that I want to get to on today's show. And sometimes we don't have enough time to get to 4 in headlines. But there are some big ones. There is a big bombshell trade request in the NFL. There was a massive NBA trade this weekend. If you were sleeping when that went down on Saturday, unfortunately, I was not. I was just about to set my phone down for the night and call it good. And I thought Shams got hacked. I said, that's not real. The Lakers just didn't get one of the 5 best players in the NBA for pennies on the dollar. That's fake.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fake. Also, one of the best balls and strikes umpires in Major League Baseball got fired today for his connection to a professional gambler. We'll get to that as well. Lots to get to and discuss in sports headlines. And coming up later on this hour, we'll have What Is Wrong With You. But we got to talk some college hoops. We want to hear from you throughout the show on all of those topics and more. Get at us if you're watching the show on YouTube right now. Again, the channel is 580 Sports Talk. We have the live chat on the web browser, the mobile app, where you can interact with us and your fellow listeners throughout the program on the YouTube stream. You can also text this show, 785-272-9429. That is 785-272-9429. K-State and KU played on Saturday. It was they dovetailed a little bit. You watch one, you can watch the other. It was kind of nice how it all sort of broke down time-wise. We will get to KU. We're starting with the team that won. We're starting with the team that took care of business on Saturday afternoon. And naturally, that was those taking care of business Kansas State Wildcats, who put together an 80-61 win over Iowa State. They were 16.5-point underdogs, and they won by 19 at Hilton Coliseum. They had not won a road game for 13 months, damn near. And Iowa State hadn't lost a home game in 29 tries. And both of those streaks bit the dust, not just by accident, not just a fluke. It wasn't some blind heave, 60-foot shot at the buzzer. No, Kansas State ragdolled Iowa State at Hilton Coliseum. They made TJ Otzelberger so mad he almost burst through his size medium polo. Got a technical foul in the second half. That coach, that band of unethical hoopers, that crowd all had to watch K-State strut off the floor in the Lavenders, look good, play good, with a 19-point victory. That is by far, it's not close, my favorite win of the Jerome Tang era so far. I enjoyed it from start to finish. And if Kansas State can win in that building, in that atmosphere, where can't they win? Because that becomes the question now. It's like, hey, well, why can't they go to Tempe late night tomorrow night and go beat Arizona State? And then why can't they knock off a reeling Kansas team on Saturday in the Sunflower Showdown? Then all of a sudden they're over 500 and they're over 500 in the Big 12, or they're back to 500 in the Big 12. Taking it one game at a time, keeping things small instead of looking at the big picture, I think has really been beneficial for this Kansas State team, because you look big picture, it still doesn't look very good for Kansas State to get to where they want to go, which is the NCAA tournament. It doesn't. They're still not a 500 team. They're still 4-6 in the conference at the midway point. They're 10-11 overall. It's a lot of losses. They've got to be just about perfect the rest of the way, realistically speaking. But that's big picture. Small picture, they got a game they can go win on the road at an Arizona State team that's not particularly good on Tuesday night. Go win that one and figure it out from there. Take it a game at a time. And I think that this Kansas State team deserves a lot of credit for having found ways to do that. And here's the thing I think that Jerome Tang deserves a lot of credit for when it comes to this team. I remember 2 years ago, I was at Bramlage Coliseum. K-State played Oklahoma State. Some of you may remember this game. It was a regular season game. K-State won it. One of the most awesome plays to win a game, essentially, that I've ever seen in person, where Marquise Noel somehow spins out of a trap on the wing, out like 30 feet from the basket, and somehow sees Keontae Johnson cutting down the left baseline and throws an inch-perfect alley-oop. And when I tell you, from my vantage point, which was across the court, I was on the tunnel end, the basket occurred on the other end of the floor, the closed end at Bramlage. I thought that Keontae Johnson had dropped from the rafters to catch that pass and dunk it for a huge hoop, a huge moment in the game. I've been to Bramlage quite a few times in my years covering K-State. I don't think outside of Kansas games I've ever heard Bramlage louder than it was in that moment. Incredible game, incredible finish. Anyway, what I remember was after that game, and Jerome Tang in his press conference. I've never forgotten this. It's very rare that things stick with me from a post-game press conference, but this is one of those things that's always stuck with me. And Jerome Tang was telling a story, and as he often does in a post-game press conference, he'll turn to scripture. He'll reference something that he read in the Bible. We know that Jerome Tang wears his faith on his sleeve. He'll mention something that he heard in a sermon or read in the Bible or a passage from scripture, something along those lines. And it was no different that night. And he had mentioned hearing a sermon about going to battle and shooting your arrow. Shoot the arrow you have. Don't worry about what your arrow is or isn't. You have to shoot the arrow that you have to win the battle. And I remember Jerome Tang telling that story that night in relation to Marquise Noel. And I'm paraphrasing what Tang said, but essentially it was at that point that he decided that instead of trying to make Marquise Noel something he was not, instead of trying to constrain his veteran point guard, he went to Marquise Noel and he said, "You're my arrow, and we're going to win these battles with you as you are. You're my arrow, and I'm going to shoot my arrow, and my arrow is Marquise Noel." And we know what happened from there. Noel was a third-team All-American. K-State went to the Elite Eight. It has taken Jerome Tang longer to reach that point with Doug McDaniel. And I think some of that is maybe there's a bit of a stronger will on Doug McDaniel's side of things. Maybe he's a little bit more stubborn and hard-headed. And certainly, I think when you're not winning games, that K-State team came out of the gate pretty strong. Certainly didn't stumble the way that this K-State team did in the non-conference play. There's not that frustration that comes with losing that adds friction to a relationship that's already got plenty of friction. Like, there are a lot of reasons why Jerome Tang and Doug McDaniel might have clashed or might have butted heads at some point during this season. But I don't know when exactly it happened, but it is clear that it has happened. That Jerome Tang has decided, faults and all, warts and all, Doug McDaniel is my arrow. And if we're going to win some battles, that's my arrow. And I got to go into battle with him. And Doug McDaniel playing well neatly coincides with this stretch. Last 3 weeks of games, Kansas State is the 6th best team in the country, according to Bart Torvik's advanced numbers. And in the last 3 games, over the course of the 3-game winning streak that they're currently on, they're number 1 in the advanced metrics. So it's not just, oh, the Cats are getting some results. No, the Cats are playing elite basketball the last 3 weeks. And it all starts, just as it did 2 years ago in the Imperial point guard to just be himself. And everybody reaps the rewards when it works for the point guard, because now Coleman Hawkins doesn't have to be the primary distributor and playmaker. He can just be Coleman Hawkins, the best version of Coleman Hawkins. And it frees Brendan Hawson up to be the best version of Brendan Hawson. Quick aside about Brendan Hawson. I think that steal he got in the second half saved the basketball game. I think Iowa State's making a run. I think they're winning 8. And Hilton's rocking. And Iowa State sends out a trap. The thing about Iowa State, man, they do. They defend so well, so fundamentally well. When they're not flopping all over the place, they defend really fundamentally well. And they put out a trap on McDaniel, and he slips at midcourt, just across midcourt. He loses the basketball. If you watch the game, you know what I'm talking about. And it's a 2-on-0 developing, essentially, for Iowa State. And Brendan Hawson gets back faster than I thought he was capable of getting back on defense. and he breaks up the breakaway, and he steals the ball. And K-State goes back the other end. And I think they might have scored on the ensuing possession. But that defensive play kept it from being a two-possession game and kept the arena from getting louder and really just steadied the ship. And that was the story of the game, really, the story of the 40 minutes. Every time Iowa State threw a haymaker, K-State had a response. Iowa State had that big first-half run, going that 13-0 run, and K-State hit back to take a lead into the locker room. It was tremendous mental fortitude on the part of these guys, and you don't get there. You don't get to a place where mental fortitude is like this if you're not playing confident basketball. And you don't get to the point where you're playing confident basketball if you don't trust your teammates and trust your role. And it all starts from Doug McDaniel being the point guard. And now everything else makes sense. Everything else about the way the roster is constructed now, everything else about the way the rotation works makes sense because Doug McDaniel is playing a high-level point guard right now.
I think it goes back to, as you mentioned, Doug McDaniel, but all the guys, right? All the transfer guys, that they just didn't seem like they were cohesive enough at the start of conference.
That's a good
play.
word for it, yeah.
And, I wasn't watching this game. I was at the Washburn game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was, checking the box score, looking at some things, and just to see all of their shot percentage pretty high for a lot of the players and points in the mid-teens for a bunch of of the guys that transferred in. I think that's good because it seems like usually there's one guy during the time where they weren't playing cohesively, there'd be one guy, he'd have high points, but the rest would have under 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when
that's a great
all
observation.
guys are, it shows in this game specifically, they're running on all cylinders, they're sharing the basketball, and they're all scoring points.
And that's what happens when your two best guys are not selfish players. When your best guys are a point guard and a guy like Hawkins, who's never been a selfish scorer, always had the ability, but he's never been a selfish player. He's always been one of those guys that's going to fill up the stat sheet when he's going good. But that is a great observation that you're starting to see more of that scoring balance. And that's what the 5-out motion is intended to do, right? Like, it's not meant to be a whole lot of one-on-one. It can look like a whole lot of one-on-one when everybody's kind of standing around and they don't know where to cut or who to cut off of or who's going to get them the ball if they cut. Well, now everybody kind of knows. And it looks like sweet music instead of sounding like a discordant symphony on that offensive end of the floor. And again, it starts on the court with Doug. It starts off the court with, as Tim Fitzgerald put it when we talked to him last week, Jerome Tang kind of had to admit that he'd lost the battle of wills with Doug McDaniel. He kind of had to admit to himself that, hey, look, whatever I want Doug McDaniel to be, I don't know that he's going to get there. But what he is now, I have to get the best out of. I have to get the best Doug McDaniel he can be out of him if this team is going to do anything, accomplish anything, be a team worth watching, be a team worthy of support, frankly, from a fan base that was not really in with both feet on this edition of Kansas State basketball. We know this because we heard from you. We heard from people who said, yeah, I'm out on the men. I'll watch the women. Yeah, I'm out on this team. I'm out on these guys. I don't care about these guys. They don't represent the university. They don't represent that uniform. They don't do it the right way. Well, now they're doing it the right way. And the winning has followed that. It's not as though this is a group that just started to front run, right? Like they had one good result and it became something that was perpetuating. They played really well against Texas Tech and they blew that game. They should have beaten Texas Tech at home, which that would look like a really good win right now because Tech, I think, is on like a 6-game winning streak from that game. Like they are rolling. They won at Houston on Saturday without their best player and their head coach for most of the game because they both got ejected in the first half. And I think Grant McCaslin was right. I think that flagrant 2 was a bit much on JT Toppin, but neither here nor there. That game, that was the one that showed, okay, everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction. Everybody's all in. We're committed. We're going to play the right way. We're going to do the right things. And then K-State lost the game anyway, at home, in front of nobody at Bramlage Coliseum. That was one of the worst midweek crowds you'll ever see for a game. It didn't deter them from continuing to do the right things and respect their process and respect the game of basketball. They played 40 tough minutes at Allen Fieldhouse. They didn't win that game, but it didn't deter them. They went to Baylor, nearly knocked off Baylor and Waco. Would have been great to win that game. didn't knock them off course. The losing kept happening, but the process, the improvement, the growth, that kept happening. And now you've seen 3 straight wins over a West Virginia team that was ranked when they came into Bramlage. That was a blowout. Blew out an Oklahoma State team you should blow out at home. And then you go on the road in a place where nobody's winning these days. A place where you can now argue with a straight face is the toughest home court advantage in the Big 12. I don't know that I agree with the argument, but you can make it now. And a team that was favored by 16.5 points, a team that needed a get-right game after losing in stunning fashion at Arizona earlier in the week, and you punked them. That's what K-State did. They made Iowa State quit. The final 2 minutes were just like a scrimmage. People were leaving Hilton Coliseum early. That's what Kansas State just did to that team. If they can do that to that team in that barn with that crowd, there's no telling what they can do from here. But the beauty of it is, they're not thinking big picture right now. They really are a team that feels very narrow-minded, very single-minded about the next game, the next opportunity. And they can go win at Arizona State. I don't know that they will. Never easy to win on the road, but at least it's never as easy as the Cats just made it look to go win on the road. But if they can win at Iowa State, can they win at Arizona State? And then the showdown's at home on Saturday. And didn't Jerome tank 2-0 against KU at Bramlage? I'm just saying, keep putting one foot in front of the other with a team that's playing this level of basketball. This isn't a fluke, guys. This isn't a fluke. There appears to have been a switch that flipped. And over 3 weeks now, K-State is playing as well as anybody in the country. Keep the momentum going, 1 foot at a time, 1 game at a time, and see where it takes you. We'll step aside. We'll talk a little bit about KU coming up, the opposite on the vibe spectrum right now going on in Lawrence. But first, it's What Is Wrong With You, and it's next on 580 Sports Talk. It is a new week. It is a new month of What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. And what better time to introduce a new sponsor of What Is Wrong With You. Now sponsored by Ryan Mowinkle and Mowinkle Insurance and Financial Services. Mo's a big fan of sports, particularly those Washburn Ichabods. He's a big fan of What Is Wrong With You. He's a big fan of you, probably, and I bet you'd be a big fan of him. Go check him out. RyanMowinkle.com is his website. He is our new sponsor of What Is Wrong With You. Thank you, Mo. Appreciate it. What is wrong with you time? 2 stories. Brendan's gone for the week. He doesn't get to play. Spencer, you get to play. Go ahead and give us a What Is Wrong With You.
All right, we're going back to the well, back to Florida, where the endless stories continue. A Winter Haven man who was on probation is behind bars after deputies say he interfered with a first responder at the scene of a crash. Deputies with the Polk County Sheriff's Office were investigating a vehicle crash at Winter Lake Road and Brandy Chase Boulevard around 9:25 on Tuesday of last week when they said 23-year-old Sebastian Angel Suarez approached the scene and asked, "Yo, what the bleep happened?" The deputy said,
I'd have the same question, in fairness.
The deputy said he stopped what he was doing, turned to Suarez and explained it was a crash and that everyone appeared to be doing all right. However, according to the sheriff's office, Suarez got within a foot of the deputy and angrily snapped back, "No, bleep, a car crash happened. Who hit who?" The deputy said he told Suarez to step back so deputies could work. Suarez yelled, "Bleep you. You can't tell me what to do." The deputy said he then explained to Suarez that he was impeding the deputy's work and that he needed to move back or be arrested. Suarez said, I'm on an ankle monitor with a curfew. You can't do bleep. You can't take me anywhere." According to a deputy, Suarez continued to act out and was uncooperative. He was arrested and charged with violation of probation, willful child abuse, interfering with a first responder, and 2 counts of resisting arrest. After he arrived at jail, deputies said he calmed down and explained that a relative was involved in the crash and that the deputies were investigating. So,
okay. Yeah. I guess I understand his side of the story, that he was, he maybe saw and recognized the car and wanted some information, but like, you don't want to like pick a fight with the police while you're on probation and wearing an ankle monitor.
I also think if you're like, I get you're upset, maybe you're feeling it, you're emotional. It could be a family member. There's no reason I should have had to say bleep as many times as I just said when you're talking to an officer of the law.
Yeah. Like you can't take me anywhere. Yes, they can, buddy.
And they did.
Right back to jail. Yes, they can. Try them. That's a lot. All right. My story today on What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Ryan Mowinkle, RyanMowinkle.com. We meet U.S. Drug Enforcement Officer and Nassau County Sheriff's Deputy, this is Florida, James Darrell Hickox. And for about 5 years, he used his position with law enforcement to moonlight as a drug dealer. He even once stole cocaine from an evidence locker and replaced it with 3D printed cocaine.
What?
Yeah. 3D printed brick. His various schemes didn't work, and now he's been sentenced to 17 years in prison. He pled guilty to the various charges against him last year. Ran his drug dealing game while employed as a deputy for the Nassau County Sheriff's Department in Florida and as a DEA agent. He pled guilty to taxes of charges of stealing drugs and money, transferring drugs to dealers for sale on the street, and tax evasion. He made more than $420,000 as a drug dealer. The IRS was mad they didn't get their cut. The schemes were not sophisticated. He worked with other law enforcement officers to set up drug busts. They do the bust, skim money and drugs off the top or steal them from evidence, and then give them to street-level dealers to sell for them. In one instance, they stole more than 1,000 pounds of weed from an evidence locker, claimed to have burned it, and then turned around and sold it. In one of the more bizarre schemes, Hickox stole a kilo of cocaine from an evidence locker and replaced it with a brick he'd made in a 3D printer, which he sprinkled with real cocaine in an attempt to make it look real. When the police figured out what was going on, raided Hickox's house, it was stocked with 4 weapons pulled from evidence lockers and marked for destruction, as well as an illegally modified machine gun. Then they came upon his garage, which was marked by the sign, Gator's Man Cave. You know where they found in Gator's Man Cave? Drugs.
Yeah.
Lots of drugs. Lots of meth. Lots of cocaine, fentanyl. The motivations behind Hickox's scheme shifted depending on who was asking. In court, he claimed it was a Breaking Bad situation and that he'd gotten a cancer diagnosis and was worried about leaving money behind for his family after he died. His parents blamed the job. His father telling a local TV station, he was a drug dealer for 10 years. So if he becomes a drug dealer, everyone's acting surprised. Why are you so surprised? That's what you had him doing for 10 years. So that's what we got here. We got Gator and his man cave and his 3D brick of cocaine and all the stolen drugs and guns. We got a guy who overreacted at the scene of an accident. Who we got today?
Oh, you can't beat 3D printing a brick of cocaine.
Now, would 3D printing cocaine get you high?
Unfortunately not, but he sprinkled it.
He did. He sprinkled it with the real. He said, unfortunately not.
I mean, like
I guess from the perspective of somebody who might be wanting to get high.
Yes, if you're that person, unfortunately, you can't. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. Fortunately, it's just sprinkled with it.
So, yeah, we're going to go with the DEA officer, the 3D printed brick of cocaine. That is going to be Gator and his man cave. Going to be our winner on What Is Wrong With You. Once again, it is sponsored by Ryan Mowinkle. Mowinkle Insurance and Financial Services. RyanMowinkle.com. We appreciate Ryan. He appreciates all of you. And he appreciates a good What Is Wrong With You story. And who doesn't? We're going to step aside. Speaking of what is wrong with you, what is wrong with the Kansas Jayhawks? We're going to talk about it on the other side of this time out on 580 Sports Talk. .438 on 580 Sports Talk. A little more than halfway through this Monday edition of the show. No games tonight. No Chiefs Kingdom tonight. There will be a Chiefs Kingdom show following the Super Bowl. Jeff Mitty's show coming up tonight. We'll talk a little bit more about K-State women's basketball coming up in a bit. Jeff Mitty's show at 6 o'clock tonight here on 580 WIBW FM 104.9. Jump into the show today. We want to hear from you. Text line is 785-272-9429. If you are watching the video stream, you can leave a comment on our Facebook page, WIBW News, or get in the live chat on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel today if you have not already. Again, remember, we get to 800 subscribers. Brendan and I are going to arm wrestle on camera. So if that doesn't excite you to subscribe if you have not already, I don't know what will. But go ahead and subscribe if you have not already against 580 Sports Talk on YouTube and jump into the live chat. Interact with us and your fellow listeners. To the pantheon of losses that are defined by the comments that Bill Self made in the postgame about them, a pantheon that includes the Topeka YMCA game. That was after a loss to TCU in 2013. Or the I was hoping that was vodka game. That was Kentucky 2014. Can add the Bad Oranges game to the list because Bad Oranges are what Bill Self blamed, not seriously, but verbally, for K-State suffering the biggest blown lead in a loss.
You mean
in the KU, suffering the biggest blown lead in a loss in the history of Jayhawk basketball. A 21-point lead by the wayside as KU loses to Baylor on Saturday afternoon in Waco. And unlike the Topeka YMCA game or the vodka game, unlike those games, this one should sting a little more because it doesn't feel like a one-off. This game should sting a little more because it was 1 week after a similarly baffling, befuddling, and ultimately inexcusable blown lead and loss. I don't know which one was worse. Probably the Houston overtime and it happened at Allen Fieldhouse. But two games that Kansas had no business losing that they lost. And now confront the Imperial Era of Kansas basketball is over with. And let me explain what I mean by that. One of my favorite writers on the internet is a music writer, Tom Bryan, for the music review and culture website Stereo Gum. Tom Bryan, very good writer. He's written a book and he writes a weekly series about every song that has ever gone to number one on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. He's in the middle of 2018 right now. They publish every Monday. Today's is about Nice for What by Drake. It's 2018. So that's where he's at right now. Anyway, and he's written about every one of them that's ever been, every song that's ever gone to number one, even has a book about them on the Billboard Hot 100. And a phrase that he uses to refer to certain pop stars that have dominated the charts for an extended period of time, he refers to it as the Imperial Era of that particular artist. Like right now, we are in the middle of an Imperial Era for Taylor Swift, where everything she releases goes to number one. Everything she releases is a guaranteed hit. Everything she touches turns to gold. Drake had an Imperial Era. Whitney Houston had an Imperial Era. Maroon 5, not as big as those others, but
we could be in Kendrick's Imperial Era.
I don't know if he's a pop star though. We're talking about pop star.
I mean, Drake's not really a pop star.
Nah, he's a pop star. He left the rap lane and started singing, you know, when he's doing it all for the ladies, that's when he entered the pop star territory. But like Britney Spears had an Imperial Era. Everything they put out went to number one in that period of time. Bruno Mars, The Weeknd, artists like that. Where everything they touch goes to number one, and it just feels like they're inevitable. Their domination of the charts feels inevitable. And eventually it ends. Like, it doesn't mean that artist stops being talented. It doesn't mean that they never get to number one again. It just means that not everything they release is a surefire hit. That there are a few more duds in there, some clunkers. They've been surpassed in their stature by somebody else, by another one of their peers. It's a fall off, and it happens to everyone. And in college basketball, you don't stay in an Imperial Era forever. None of the Blue Bloods have. It's happened to Duke. It's happened to North Carolina. It's happened to Kentucky. It's happened to UCLA. It's happened to Indiana. And you can identify, if you were familiar with those programs, what the Imperial Eras were for like Duke. You go like probably early 80s all the way up through the mid 2010s for Duke. UCLA's was obviously the wooden years. Indiana, the night years. Sometimes it just corresponds with one coach. Kentucky has had a rise and fall. They're actually one of the more fascinating programs in history, the things they've overcome. And honestly, kind of on a similar timeline with Kansas, with some probation in the late 80s and rebirth in the 90s, things like that. But I say all that to say, feels like Kansas's Imperial Era is over. And here's the evidence for that. Not only is Kansas going to finish outside the top two in the Big 12 this year, that's going to happen. That will be the first time that has happened to Kansas in consecutive seasons since 1988 and 1989. And yes, I know what happened in 1988. There's a reason that team was called Danny and the Miracles and not Danny and the Inevitables, right? But they finished outside the top two in their league back-to-back years, 88 and 89. 89, of course, was the first year Roy Williams riddled by sanctions. Larry Brown got that program in trouble on his way out the door. It's not just that, though. Kansas is probably going to finish outside the top three in their league this year. And that hasn't happened in back-to-back years since 1982 and 1983. And that is where we are at with Kansas basketball. They are no longer untouchable in their own league. And that is how Imperial Era has come to an end. It doesn't mean Kansas is never going to win a national championship or win a conference championship ever again. It's just what we have come to know and understand that Kansas basketball has represented from the early Roy Williams years when we went back to that national title game, lost to Duke. You want to start there, and you want to take it all the way up through the 2022 title team or the 2023 team that followed that. That's the Imperial Era. That's a very long era of basketball. It encompasses 2 coaches. It encompasses many, many years, many generations. That Kansas basketball is not this Kansas basketball. We are watching something different. We are watching a Kansas basketball program that is less inevitable. We are watching a Kansas basketball that no longer feels like, well, they're at home, so of course they're going to win. We are no longer watching a Kansas basketball where, well, it's the Big 12. I mean, yeah, they're going to win the league. We're halfway through the league schedule, and we know Kansas is going to win the league. Like, not, I don't know if they're going to win the league this year. You know, for years, we would do that, right? There'd be a stretch of play in league play every year, and Kansas would maybe lose back-to-back games, or they'd trick one off at home, and you think, oh, I don't know, Kansas might not win the league. And then they would win the league. For 16 years, they did this. We came to expect it. And now, I don't think we expect that anymore. I don't think we can expect Kansas to be infallible anymore. Do you expect Kansas to win tonight at home against Iowa State?
No.
I think Iowa State is a tougher basketball team than Kansas. And I think Iowa State is going to win. I think they'll be more desperate. I think they'll play to an identity that allows them to win on the road. And I don't think they're scared of Allen Fieldhouse. I don't think anybody's scared of the Big Bad Wolf anymore. That's how Imperial Eras end in college basketball. And that's where we've arrived with the Kansas Jayhawks. And we've arrived there not because Bill Self forgot how to coach or because Bill Self forgot how to recruit. This team just isn't good. They don't shoot it worth a damn. Their transfer class hasn't clicked. A.J. Store's a dud. Rylan Griffin's trick or treat. Zeke Mayo only plays well at home. They don't shoot. They got 2 players who cannot score in their starting lineup, and they have to play because they're super important on the defensive end, and they're super important keeping everybody organized, and they're calm, and they do good things on the court. Too many good things to take off the court, but one thing they do not do is score the basketball. And when you're getting buried under an avalanche of buckets like KU was at Baylor, your answer cannot be the 2-man game of DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams. And you know how I know that can't be the answer? Because that was the answer that KU tried to give on Saturday, and they ended up blowing a 21-point lead, losing by double digits. One last point I want to make about this Kansas team. I think every team takes on the personality of its best player. I'm a big believer in that overarching theory of team sports, that you are your best player in a lot of ways, or your best players in certain sports or in certain cases. You take on the attitude and the personality of the guy who you are depending on the most to get you to the finish line and win basketball games. Kansas's best player is Hunter Dickinson. And I'm not going to sit here behind this microphone and tell you that Hunter Dickinson is not a good basketball player, because he objectively is. And he has the honors and he has the numbers to back up. Hunter Dickinson's a good player. He is a great college player, I would say. I don't know what his pro prospects look like. Frankly, that interests me less and less as we go along when talking about college basketball. If they pop in the NBA, great for them. As a college basketball player, Hunter Dickinson objectively has had an outstanding career. And for better or for worse, that means that this Kansas basketball team has taken on the personality of Hunter Dickinson. And I think that's more worse than better, because I think Hunter is a front runner. I think when the going gets tough, he gets going, and not in a good way. I think he shies away when things get tough. I think he's soft. I think he's that word that Bill Self has used as a pejorative for many years to describe many of his players. And I should never be using that word to refer to somebody who is the biggest player on the court at all times. But Hunter Dickinson is a front runner. When things are going great, nobody I'd rather have on my team. because Hunter's going to thump his chest. He's going to talk his talk, and he's going to make some plays. When things are going good, Hunter Dickinson's a great best player to have because you can steamroll teams. Because there's not a lot of teams in the country have an answer for that guy. But when the going gets tough, I think he shrinks from the moment. And I think this KU team has proven that they shrink from the big moment this year. This team shrinks from the moment. And I never, ever thought I would say that about a Kansas Jayhawk basketball team. But I'm saying it about this one. And the evidence is right in front of you. It's undeniable. Now, they got a chance to make me look really stupid tonight, which is the beauty of sports, right? And look, would not be the first time. It would not be the first time. But I watch this Kansas team, and I see a team that has brought to an end an era where the bare minimum expectation of Kansas was, well, they're going to win their league and play in the second weekend of March. I don't expect this team to make the second weekend. I think if you had tickets for Wichita in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament, you thought you were going to see the Jayhawks there, I'd pump the brakes. I might think about selling. They're not going to send a 4 seed to play 2 hours from their home or a 5. This team doesn't have it. This team doesn't have it. This group doesn't have it. It doesn't mean that a Bill Self team will never again rise to the top of the Big 12 or win a national championship or that they should fold the program at Kansas. I just mean that the team I am watching, coupled with the team that I watched last year, has sort of confirmed this thought that's been bubbling in the back of my mind for a long while. That the era where KU was a colossus, the Imperial KU basketball era, is over. And that's as much about their competition as it is about them, but it is also undeniably about them. And it's a team like this, a team whose invincibility, a team for whom we have said multiple times, there's no way you can lose that game. And then they lose that game? That's the kind of team where you say, yeah, the Imperial era is over. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We will wrap up this 4 o'clock hour, 5A Sports Talk.
It's a new year, and that means new habits. So why not start 2025 off right with a car care routine that keeps your ride looking its best all year long? Start a new habit this year. Wash your car weekly and treat yourself to Charlie's Express Interior Service once a month. Charlie's will vacuum, clean your windows, and wipe down surfaces inside, leaving your car feeling fresh and looking flawless. Make 2025 the year of a cleaner, happier car. Visit Charlie's Car Wash in Topeka at Wanamaker and Huntoon.
Meet Richard, the new service manager at Four Seasons RV. He's a certified master RV tech with 9 years experience.
Richard's mantra is, whatever your camper needs, I'm an expert at that.
And by adding 3 experienced certified techs, the Four Seasons service department will keep those 12 service bays humming.
Get in and out quickly and back to making memories.
Four Seasons RV, where the fun begins. KansasRV.com.
6 miles east of Abilene, along I-70.
WIBW Topeka.
Good text from the text line, 785-272-9429, from a Jayhawk fan. Even when KU was up 20 at halftime, I told a friend of mine I attributed it to Baylor being shorthanded more than KU's play. Even Coach said at halftime we didn't guard at all. When Edgecombe went down, yeah, Baylor lost their best guy with 15 minutes left in the game, and they still came back and they won by double digits. It's not like they needed all 20 minutes to fight back and pull it out the horn. They wrecked KU in the second half. When Edgecombe went down, it should have been over. Instead, they lost to basically 4 players because they played with no enthusiasm or passion. Nobody stood up as a leader, and they're playing through the motions. This is unacceptable at KU. Great text from the 785. And yeah, again, that's where it comes back to my point about your leadership. Naturally, guys are going to turn to your best guy. And Hunter Dickinson's their best guy. He is. He's their best player. But I don't think he's made for that moment. I don't think he's made for the moment where the going gets tough. I don't know why if you're 7-2, you're not. But I don't think he is. I think there's ample evidence. And I think it's hard for DeJuan Harris to lead in the same way that Hunter Dickinson leads. And I think it's hard for KJ Adams even to lead in the same way that Hunter Dickinson is the leader. Because with respect to those guys, that's not where all heads turn when the game is there to be won. They don't turn to a steady point guard or the floor general. They don't turn to the energy guy at point guard. They turn to the best guy. They turn to the biggest guy. You're going to be the one. Hunter, we need you. And Hunter was taking floaters and missing layups and getting blown by on defense. That little guard from Baylor couldn't miss anything around the rim because in the AP polls, our resident Mizzou fan in the live chat, Trevor, happy to point out that is, in fact, one spot below the Missouri Tigers, who, lest you forget, beat KU earlier this year. I do point that out. So KU, lowest point in the rankings this season as they fall down in the AP poll to number 16. K-State women dropped a spot as well. They went 2-0, crushed Kansas in the Sunflower Showdown yesterday. Absolutely demolished them, even with Serena Sundell having an off game. No Aoka Lee, Serena Sundell off game. K-State still won by $1 billion.
That's crazy.
And they drop a spot to number 12. But
yeah,
they play number 9 TCU on Wednesday. Monster game. We got some tickets for that game. We're going to give them away later this week. Be listening for your chance to win some tickets to see the K-State women Wednesday night at Bramlage. Coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, we'll talk more Chiefs. We'll preview Big Monday at Allen Fieldhouse tonight and a big night of sports headlines. That's coming up. 580 Sports Talk.
to spend the rest of your money because you're in charge. Right now, you're going to pay for groceries. But you decide what groceries. Just keep in mind here, I'm not a dishwashing soap. But you decide if you're going to buy that soap. Just these dishes won't clean themselves, will they? Remember, with Progressive's Name Your Price tool, we'll help you find coverage at a fair price. Then you're in charge. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, NFL Insider Matt Verderame, also needs person coverage match limited by state law.
Here's your big forecast on 580 WIBW. Light clouds in south this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 60 north winds, 10 to 15 miles an hour. Overcast, night lows dip down to about 28. Tomorrow, high at 38. Daytime highs approaching 46. Wednesday, chance for drift 42. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times 30. I'm in Ray Miller, Capital Federal Weather Center. Right now, 47.
FM 104.9, 580 AM, WIBW.
Let's get it. Third and final hour of this Monday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Along with Spencer Dupuis, I am Dan Lucero. Coming to you live and direct from high up on Huntoon Hill in the capital city on the sports voice of Kansas. 580 WIBW, FM 104.9. Online at 580WIBW.com. A special hello to those watching our video stream today on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, and on Facebook at WIBW News. So glad to have you along. It is Super Bowl week. Of course, we're going to line up some special guests for you to talk Chiefs throughout the week and confirm that tomorrow, Jesse Newell from the Kansas City Star will be joining us in the 3 o'clock hour. Jesse's a friend. You know, he's been a good friend of ours here at the 580 Sports Talk over the years. Once our Jayhawk insider, now is someone who comes on here and there to share his thoughts on the Chiefs. Look forward to talking to Jesse from New Orleans and getting his thoughts on Super Bowl 59. Got some other guests we're trying to line up for you as well. Of course, we'll have Matt Derrick on Friday, our Chiefs insider. All kinds of Chiefs talk throughout the week as we get set for Super Bowl 59 this coming Sunday as the Chiefs and the Eagles fight for the Vince Lombardi Trophy at the Superdome. And you know we'll have your radio coverage right here on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9 as well, with pregame coverage starting from Westwood 1 at 1 p.m. on Sunday. Talk a little bit more about the Super Bowl here coming up in just a bit. How, generally speaking, you would think the Chiefs' Super Bowl experience, might be an edge going into this game. And maybe have played in more Super Bowls, but this is an Eagles team that by and large was just about intact when they took on the Chiefs in Phoenix 2 Februarys ago. We'll highlight that and talk about in what ways that experience could still be something of an advantage for the Chiefs going into Sunday. Also, we'll preview Big Monday tonight at Allen Fieldhouse, though really I think that's Desperation Monday for both KU and Iowa State. Those are two programs for whom the vibes have shifted quite a bit. For KU, they have shifted quite a lot. Can they recover? Can they hold serve on their home floor? Will they suffer an unthinkable third home loss in Big 12 play this season? Or will it be Iowa State who gets rocked on the chin again and loses for a third consecutive time? Remember, they were flying high. They were off to their best start in program history, and then Caleb Love hit a shot from 60 feet in Tucson. And Iowa State lost to Arizona, and then Iowa State got dog-walked by Kansas State on Saturday. I couldn't believe it was happening as it was happening. Look up, and it's a 19-point second-half lead, and even as Iowa State made their runs, Kansas State just handled that rally and would always respond with a punch of their own. So those are going to be two desperate basketball teams tonight at 8 p.m. on ESPN. We'll get to that a little bit later on this hour as well. But I said earlier, we've got a jam-packed headline segment to get to today because there's a lot happening either today or on the weekend that is worth getting to. And I don't even know really where to begin, but let's go ahead and start with the NFL news because we already hit on this a little bit earlier today with our NFL insider, Matt Verderame. The reigning defensive player of the year in the NFL, well, he's reigning for about 4 more days, and then somebody else is going to get the award. Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. He did a whole letter to the fans and everything to announce that he wanted this trade. Trying to pull up the story, but ESPN became unresponsive there for a second. Anyhow, here is the statement from Myles Garrett. It's wild. He did this like he was committing to a college. As a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. That goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man I am today. While I've loved calling the city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. Bold font. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Signed, Myles Garrett.
This sounds like I am transferring.
Yeah, it's like a transfer thing, right?
Or
First of all,
I'm decommitting.
First of all, I would like to thank God for whom all things are possible through him. I would like to thank my teammates and my coaches. Thank you for making it feel like family. With all that being said, I am hereby announcing my decommitment. Or with all that being said, I'm hereby entering the transfer portal. That was all that was missing from this eight.
Every group of 5 superstar to try to go to FB or to go to Power 5 to go play for a title.
It has always been my dream to play at the highest level of college football. Yeah. We get this from an NFL player. It's wild. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Garrett is 29 years old, has 2 years remaining on a 5-year, $125 million extension he signed in 2020. But there is no more guaranteed salary on the books. I said this with Matt Verderame. Then I asked his thoughts. There are 31 general managers, and Brett Veach is one of them, who should pick up the phone.
Yes, but how many? Actually, there are not. There are 30. Whoever the general manager of the Saints should not pick up their phone because they can't afford him.
They can't really afford anybody, but
they really can't afford to get him.
They've made so much cap magic over the years, but I think their luck is about run out on that.
Yeah.
No, but setting aside the financials, 31 teams should make this phone call. I asked Matt, what team should be the most desperate to get Myles Garrett? He said it was the Buffalo Bills. I happen to agree with him wholeheartedly. Do you have a different answer to that question, Spencer? Who do you think should be willing to trade multiple picks, maybe multiple first-round picks? I don't know if you do multiple firsts. You get a guy for 2 years unless you restructure his contract. I'd do a first and a second without thinking twice. And if it took me another day 3 or day 2 pick, I would also do that.
This is going to sound homerish, but I think the Commanders.
No, I actually think that is a good answer.
National pundits are saying this.
No, I think that is a good answer.
You need a star edge rusher.
Yeah, explain the fit. Go ahead.
I think you need a star edge rusher. I mean, you have Jonathan Allen. He's a defensive tackle. You have guys you brought in, Dante Fowler, and you brought those in on Dorrance Armstrong, 1-year deals. They played pretty well, but they're not stars. I mean, a lot of DC fans want Micah Parsons because he apparently wants out of Dallas and he's Dan Quinn kind of guy. But I think this is perfect for the Commanders. I think you get a star guy. He's 29, got 2 years left on his contract. You give him a little extension. You rework the contract, give him a little bit more money. I think you go a 4-year deal. You restructure to a 4-year deal and give them some more money. Commanders have the 3rd or 2nd most cap room in the league. Maybe you front that deal.
I think it makes sense for the Commanders. I do. I think the Bills make a ton of sense. I think I think that's the team that should say, I'll do. Brandon Beane should just offer pick after pick after pick. He should almost approach it like if you've ever played a video game and you've done the franchise mode on a video game and you just keep adding things until the interest bar goes from red to green and he's okay, make the trade. Brandon Beane should do that. He should stay on the phone with Andrew Berry, who's the general manager of the Browns, and just keep offering him things until Andrew Berry finally says yes. But here's one other team that should do that too. The Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I've been seeing them mocked to a defensive tackle at 27,
Mm-hmm.
and a defensive tackle from where I went to college who's really dang
Interesting.
good, Mike Green. So they're either going to trade for a guy or get a defensive tackle, I think, or defensive end, excuse me, in the draft.
Well, they already have a star edge rusher
But you
in
need to
Aiden
pair 'em.
Hutchinson. But you know what's better than one?
Two, pair. A pair. A pair is better than one.
Yes. You can never have too many. This
Yes.
is the position at which you can never have too many guys. And Myles Garrett is an all-timer. Like, we are talking about one of the great defensive players in the history of the NFL. He has the 5th most sacks of any player in his first 8 seasons since the sack became an official stat in 1982. The only guys to have more sacks in their first 8 years of their career, Reggie White, Hall of Famer, DeMarcus Ware, Hall of Famer, TJ Watt's going, and Jared Allen's going to get there eventually. That's what we're talking about with Myles Garrett. Now, Barry, the aforementioned Andrew Barry, the general manager of the Browns, has been resolute, even at the Senior Bowl this week, saying, I'm not trading him. Not even for multiple first-round picks. 2 first-round picks wouldn't be enough. Not trading Myles Garrett. Well, equation changes a little bit when Myles Garrett doesn't want to be there.
Exactly.
And I think that if you're the Browns, like, is Myles Garrett the piece that's going to make the Browns a contender this next year? No, they're in hell. They deserve hell for the contract they gave to the Nasty Man. So they are where they deserve. They are in hell, and they should be in hell, and they have nobody to blame but themselves for being in hell. But you know, you don't get out of hell hoarding your best player if he's not happy and keeping him there. You get out of hell one draft pick at a time. And so they got to go and get picks. And I think the Bills and the Lions are the 2 teams, with respect to the Commanders, who also make sense. Like I said, there are 31 teams for whom this makes sense. But I think that those are the 2 teams, because the Lions, they're set. Like, they've got so much young talent. If ever there's a team right now to do the Les Snead F them picks approach, right now it's the Lions.
Oh, yeah.
Lions are the
100%.
team. Yes, the Lions are the team best positioned to say F them picks and go and trade a whole handful of picks. The Bills, though, like, they got to feel like it's now or never to beat the Chiefs. We got to do this. And the reason we haven't done it, Matt Verderame laid this out beautifully when we talked to him in the 3:00 hour. The Bills haven't beaten the Chiefs because they've never had a guy who could get after the quarterback. And they thought Von Miller was that guy, and he wasn't that guy anymore. Then he got hurt, and now he's really not that guy. Go and get that guy and do whatever it takes to go and get that guy and take your chances over the top of finally beating the Chiefs. Speaking of whom, Vance, very funny on the YouTube live comment, says his only chance, Garrett's, of doing the Super Bowl thing is with the Chiefs, right? Like, if he's going to stay in the AFC, like, that would be the destination. Look, if you're Brett Beach, you're irresponsible if you don't call and ask Andrew Barry, hey, how does the 32nd pick in the next 2 drafts sound? Who cares? Honest to God, if I'm the Chiefs, I would do 2 first-rounders for Myles Garrett. If I thought I could make it work under the cap,
I mean,
I would do it.
It might not be number 32 next year.
It might not. But
I think next year is going to be the toughest year they have.
It could be. You could be absolutely
Cap
right.
restraint wise.
At the same time, if I have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, I'm operating from the base assumption that the draft pick I've got in the first round is going to start with a 3. At the very least, it's going to start with a 3.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be opposed. I would try and make that happen. And you know what? If it meant that I lost, I couldn't pay Trey Smith and I couldn't pay maybe Justin Reed, darn.
Yeah.
But I think the Chiefs are going to operate in a different direction, because at the end of the day, it's not Madden. It is not, franchise mode. And I suspect the Chiefs will do different things with their money and their resources. At the same time, there are teams who should absolutely not and sell the farm if they can for Myles Garrett. First headline for you, Spencer.
Yes, we're going to stay in the NFL world. Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, is no longer the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. He is leaving the college ranks to go back to the NFL ranks. He is now the Las Vegas Raiders offensive coordinator under new head coach Pete Carroll. Obviously, Kelly spent the past 7 seasons in college football after being fired from Philadelphia. And now he transitions back to the NFL as an offensive coordinator.
So it's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
The thought of Chip Kelly back in the NFL and
are you ready for his offenses again?
Working with Pete Carroll, 2 guys that used to, go back and forth against each other in the Pac-12. I think what's so interesting about the Pete Carroll hiring, we've not really dug like fully deep into this, and I'm excited to like. This is the thing I wanted to talk to Matt Verderame about. We just haven't had the time with it being Super Bowl week, so I want to ask him big picture at some point. But there are 4 coaches in the AFC West for whom like their floor as coaches is something like 7-10, 8-9. Like you hire Jim Harbaugh with the expectation that you're going to win because that's all he's done. You hire Sean Payton with the expectation that he is going to win because that is all he's done. And there is now proof of concept in Los Angeles and in Denver. Pete Carroll has been an NFL head coach for 18 seasons, and 14 of them have been winning seasons. You hire him with the expectation that you're going to win. Now, they got to find their quarterback. It starts there, and no real reason in discussing much with them. If they don't find their quarterback, though, it should be noted that Pete Carroll's first season in Seattle, they won a division title with broken down Matt Hasselbeck at quarterback and Charlie Whitehurst clinching the division at quarterback that year. So I think that the floor for all 4 teams in the AFC West, like obviously we know the Mahomes-Reed floor is still higher than anyone else's, but there's not a 4-13 floor in that division anymore like there was for some years when the Broncos were screwing around with their head coaching hires, when the Raiders were busy being the Raiders. There was always that floor, and now everybody's raised the floor. And I think that's going to make for a really fascinating division moving forward. I really do. Next headline for me. This was breaking news earlier today from Major League Baseball, who has fired umpire Pat Hoberg for sharing legal sports betting accounts with a friend who bet on baseball and for intentionally deleting messages key to the investigation into his conduct. Now, Major League Baseball says that Hoberg, in the course of the appeals process, adamantly denied betting on baseball, either directly or indirectly. And Commissioner Rob Manfred, in a statement, says there is no evidence that Hoberg directly bet on games or manipulated the outcome of games in any way. There's proof in the pudding here. Anybody you look at who evaluates umpires will tell you Pat Hoberg's one of the best ball strike umpires in baseball. He's not a guy you look at, like if you would look at an Angel Hernandez ball strike chart, you would think, yeah, that guy's not on the level. If you watch a Pat Hoberg game, that guy's really good at calling balls and strikes. But he's made a really dumb mistake. Major League Baseball says in its statement they have fired him for failing to uphold the integrity of the game and that he should have known that his friend, who happens to be a professional poker player, had bet on baseball from the shared account. In a statement, Hoberg said, "I take full responsibility for the errors in judgment. They will always be a source of shame and embarrassment to me. To be clear, I have never and would never bet on baseball in any way, shape, or form. I have never would never provide information to anyone for the purpose of betting on baseball." And Major League Baseball's investigation didn't find any evidence that he did. But it's the appearance of impropriety that you have to avoid at all costs. And Pat Hoberg's failure to do that has cost him his job, and it has cost Major League Baseball one of its best home plate umpires. In Game 2 of the 2022 World Series, according to the software, the TrackMan or whatever the software is that evaluates whether a ball or a strike was called correctly, Pat Hoberg saw 129 pitches in Game 2 that were taken for either a ball or a strike, and he called them all correctly, every single one of them. He was that good that he could have a perfect umpiring game in the World Series. Did postseason games every year from 2018 to 2022 after becoming a full-time umpire in 2017. He was very good at his job, and he made a very big mistake, and this had to happen. This had to happen. There's no way that you can keep your job after associating with known gamblers. That's like in the rules.
Yeah, you can't share an account.
No. You have to know. You have to know that that is not allowed. At the same time, like, I keep making this argument for people who point to stories like this and say, well, this is, what do you expect in this era where gambling's legal now and anybody can gamble? It's legal in more states. You can do it from your phone. There's going to be more scandals and the games are rigged. Look, man, The leagues are in bed with the bookies. The games have to be on the level for this to work. The oversight that is in place makes sure that the games themselves are on the level. Now, there might be a participant or two who fudges their own participation in a game. Jonte Porter, maybe Terry Rozier. Like, there's an ongoing investigation into prop bets for college and professional basketball that is ongoing and wide-ranging and could result in some pretty significant consequences moving forward. That was reported about starting last week. But, like, the games, they have to be on the level. They have to be. Otherwise, there's no point in the leagues being in league with the FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM, or any of the other big bookies. You cannot have a product that is compromised and be in business with those people. And those people can't afford to be in business with you if your product isn't on the level. So in a weird way, what feels gross and scummy to some people about the proliferation of the relationships now between major professional leagues and the bookies, the gambling houses, that may feel off to some people, but actually it's probably the best thing for guaranteeing the integrity of the games and the results. Because there's so much regulation and there's so much oversight.
Yeah.
You got one more headline for us? Let's do the big one from the weekend.
Yeah, Luka Doncic traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, and I was getting ready to go to sleep. I think my girlfriend was 90% asleep, and I said, "Holy bleep." And I woke her up, and then she didn't really seem to hear the significance of it. And I said, "Wow." And then I saw what the compensation was, and I was like, "What year are we in?"
I said the F word on Blue Sky. I don't say the F word on social media. As a general rule, like I have a almost 8-month-old around the house. I'm trying to cut dugout potty mouth out of my diet as much as I can. I couldn't help it. Like that was an F word worthy thing that I saw float across social media. It was like 11:30 on Saturday night. And first of all, imagine being the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks and you've made this trade and everyone's reaction to it is, well, that can't be real. That's fake. There's no way that's a real thing. But no, in fact, it was a real thing. 25-year-old Luka Doncic, 5-time first-team All-NBA and scoring champion already in his young career, is now a Los Angeles Laker, traded from the Mavericks to the Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis, himself an All-NBA performer in the past, Max Christie, and 1 first-round pick. Because the Mavericks GM and the Lakers GM are buddies that go way back, and because the Mavericks GM thinks Luka's fat. Like, that was within an hour. It was like, well, the Mavericks were concerned about Luka's conditioning. I agree with Ryan Russillo of podcast, The Ringer fame. Luka Doncic could play with a lit cigarette in his mouth, and I'd still want him on my basketball team. He could play holding a vodka tonic in one hand and dribbling with the other and score 30 a night, and I would still want him on my basketball team. Oh, Luka's put on some weight? Order him a jersey a size bigger then. He just took them to the finals last year. And he got traded for pennies on the dollar. Look, you don't say out of one side of your mouth, we're worried about the availability of a guy like Luka Doncic, who has been hurt this year. He's scheduled to come off the injured list in about 5 days. Or that was his target to return to play. And we're worried about his conditioning. We're worried about his availability. And then say out of the other side of his mouth, so we traded him for Anthony Davis. Notoriously unavailable Anthony Davis, who's always hurt and who's 6 years older. It is, I think I can say without hyperbole, and we don't do a lot of NBA talk on this program, but we're making an exception here because I can say without hyperbole, it is one of the worst trades in the history of the NBA. And really in sports history. And I don't begrudge any Dallas Mavericks fan who's done with the team. Who's just done.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people
anymore.
I saw a lot of people going to American Airlines Center and putting flowers down in the papers that said RIP Mavs.
Yeah. No, it's absolute nonsense. The Mavericks, they don't get better in the short term because that whole team was constructed to play around Luka Doncic. And yes, overcome the fact that he's not the world's greatest defensive player. Like, that whole roster was built to succeed around him. And again, it's not as though it didn't succeed. They won the Western Conference last season. You had proof of concept that what you had worked. Instead, now you trade for a center to go along with the two other centers you already have on your roster, and you don't have the all-everything playmaker that made everything else work. From the Lakers' perspective, do they get a lot better right away? They've already kind of got a ball-dominant star in LeBron James. Their rest of their roster is still poop. Like, their third best player is Austin Reeves. I'm sorry. I will never take a team seriously whose third best player is Austin Reeves, because I saw Austin Reeves be somebody's best player in college, and that team went 500 in the Big 12. So if he is your third best player in the NBA, I'm sorry. I don't take you seriously as a contender. You're not a threat. They're going to lose to the Nuggets in the playoffs like they always do now. Even with Luka Doncic. But Luka is 25 years old. He's been first team all-league 5 times already. He is the next great Laker. The Lakers have this unbroken stretch, other than 2 years after Magic had to retire because he got HIV, and before Shaq signed with them. They had like a 2-year stretch where their best player was like Eddie Jones. Other than that, the entire history of the Lakers is we have one of the greatest players of all time on our roster. Go back to Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem, Magic, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron. It's an unbroken stretch of this for the Lakers. And now, as LeBron approaches retirement, because he will one day stop playing professional basketball.
Sooner rather than later.
Yes.
I mean, he's already the all-time NBA leading scorer. Like,
right.
What
He's
else does
40.
he need to accomplish?
He's 40 years old. Like, he's
playing with his son this year. How many more years does he need to do that?
But now they have Luka, and they have him like for the next decade. That's their next guy. That's the next one. He's that good. I don't care how much he weighs. You're telling me, oh, he likes to drink beer. I don't care. He could pound a sixer of Coors Light on the sideline during a game as long as he goes out and gives me 30, 10, and 6. I don't care.
One thing I was kind of shocked by is that apparently LeBron did not know about this.
Yeah, that's really
crazy. It's crazy because we know he's the de facto GM.
Yes, he's been the shadow GM of the Lakers, and they didn't tell him, oh, by the way, we're acquiring one of the 5 best players in the league. Just a heads up that's coming. The Mavericks should be ashamed and embarrassed for doing that to their fans and for doing that to their roster. The Lakers, it's a no-brainer. It doesn't mean they're going to win the championship this year, but they're set up for the next decade and a half. They have their next superstar in their long line of them. And, mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing transaction in the NBA. That'll do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines today. We're step aside for a break. Come back, talk some Chiefs, Super Bowl 59, the experience factor, and why it might still be one for the Eagles or the Chiefs, despite the fact that the Eagles also have a lot of Super Bowl experience. But before we take a timeout, I want to tell you about my friends at Great Life. February's here. That snow is all melted. We're going to start to get some warmer weather. It means the golf courses are going to be back rolling at Great Life. They've got 5 outstanding golf courses, perfectly kept. When was the last time you played a Great Life golf course? If it's been a while, get out to one of them, and you're going to be surprised by what you see. You're going to be surprised how well they play, how neatly they're manicured, how much fun they are for golfers of any skill level, including mine, which isn't anything to write home about. They've also got, of course, if you remember, 8 fitness facilities with amenities that match your fitness goals and needs. Go to greatlifetopeka.com for more information. Become a member today. Back with more 580 Sports Talk after this.
At 8, investment advisory services offered through Mid-American Wealth Advisory Group, an SEC registered investment advisory firm.
Sherry, what have you done to your hair? What do you mean? Does it not look good? It doesn't look good. It looks freaking amazing. I can't believe how thick and healthy it looks. Oh, I must know your secret. No secret. It's hair volume from New Nordic. Hair volume, huh? Well, it certainly lives up to its name. Your hair has never looked so thick. It is gorgeous. I was so tired of having thin and brittle hair. Ugh, and the shedding. So I figured I'd give hair volume a try. Needless to say, I'm thrilled with the results. Hey, where are you going? I'm going to pick up some hair volume right now. My reunion's next month and I want my hair to look as good as yours.
Hair Volume is the best-selling hair tablet in the world and one of many award-winning natural health products from New Nordic, the #1 supplier of dietary supplements in Scandinavia. Purchase at newnordicusa.com or your local CVS. Available as a tablet or delicious gummy. Help your hair look full, voluminous, and beautiful again at newnordicusa.com or CVS.
WIBW Topeka.
.536 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan and Spencer with you. Brendan's out this week. He'll be back next week. Come up in a bit. Preview a big Monday at Allen Fieldhouse tonight. Desperation Monday for KU and Iowa State. Two teams trying to avoid bad vibes getting worse. Super Bowl 59 is in 6 days. And it will feature a lot of players who played in a Super Bowl before, which is not common, obviously. And typically you don't have a lot of Super Bowl rematches. I think this is only even the 8th or 9th time in history that a Super Bowl matchup has been the same two teams. Not back-to-back years or even in the 2-year proximity of the Chiefs and the Eagles. I mean, all together. If you would count Chiefs and Vikings, if that had been the Super Bowl, because that was Super Bowl 4. By the way, quick aside. That game, somebody uploaded the CBS broadcast of Super Bowl 4 to YouTube. And my wife was running an errand yesterday, and Asher was taking a nap. And I happened upon that. I was watching some other stuff, and, the algorithm feeds you, based on what you're watching lately. So for me, it's a lot of Miss Rachel, because Asher loves Miss Rachel. And it's a lot of Chiefs content, because I've been watching, for research purposes, old highlights, things like that. Yeah. So Super Bowl 4, back before they were really calling it officially the Super Bowl, it was still the AFL NFL championship game, but it's the full CBS broadcast. Jack Buck and Pat Summerall on the call. And they took the commercials out, which is kind of a bummer. They left the halftime show in, just a marching band. Imagine the NFL doing a marching band halftime show now. They used to do these boring halftime shows. You're not old enough to remember this. They had boring halftime shows. They did Up With People a bunch in the 80s. They did Up With People a lot. They a tribute to Snoopy, I think, one year, which I like Snoopy. I got no problem with that. Yeah. But they did a bunch of that stuff. And then one year, Fox was like, hey, we're going to do a live episode of In Living Color, which was their sketch comedy show with the Wayans brothers and Jim Carrey. And we're going to do a live episode of In Living Color during halftime of the Super Bowl. And it did a monster rating. And then the next year, the NFL's like, well, we're not letting that happen again. How's Michael Jackson? That's what the NFL did. They went from marching band, all this frou-frou nonsense that people were clearly tired of. And they said, oh, yeah? You're going to turn off the TV during the Super Bowl? How about the King of Pop? You like that? And the halftime show's never been the same since. Anyway, it was very kind of fuddy-duddy halftime show there for Super Bowl 4. I did. I watched first half of the game. I was waiting for my wife to get back home, and I'd never actually, you see the highlights, but I've never actually watched the game, and it was fascinating to see. It's wild to see kickers line up for field goals. Man, Centeroo's kicking from midfield. Oh yeah, the goalposts are at the front of the end zone, not the back. That's totally normal. But back to the point I was trying to make. You don't typically see the same teams, one AFC, one NFC, play against each other in the Super Bowl again. It's only happened, I think this is the 9th time that we have had a Super Bowl that is the same matchup that we have already previously seen with the Chiefs and the Eagles. And certainly you don't typically see it in this kind of proximity. It's really rare. You saw it with the Cowboys and Steelers in the 70s. Bills and Cowboys played back-to-back Super Bowls in the 90s. You've seen it like that. The Giants and the Patriots played in 07 and 11. But for these two teams to be back in the Super Bowl against each other, you've got a lot of players who, at the very least were in uniform and played some role, if not the same kind of role they're going to play. Like Mike Caliendo played 5 special team snaps in Super Bowl 57, or last year. He played five special team snaps last year. He didn't play in Super Bowl 57, but he's obviously going to start at left guard in Super Bowl 59. But I was looking at trying to put together the list. Chiefs players who are going to play a big role on Sunday who have never played in a Super Bowl. And it's funny, it's like most of the important skill guys outside of Mahomes and Kelsey, that's true for. Your top 3 wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, first Super Bowl. Xavier Worthy, a rookie. Hollywood Brown's first Super Bowl. Kareem Hunt, first Super Bowl for him. He notably missed out on all the real fun in Kansas City. Charles Omenihu, who gets to play in his first Super Bowl. Have you watched the mic'd up yet? The all access, the on-field audio from the conference championship game?
Yes, the 30 minutes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched that on YouTube.
I did too. I watched that before I watched Super Bowl 4 yesterday. It was a long nap.
Did you watch?
Asher took a long nap.
Did you watch? Have you been keeping up with the? Hate to get into a little tangent here about the Chiefs productions.
No, I don't watch all of those.
Oh well, the one that they just posted Friday, very good, very good. The franchise, I think they call it.
Franchise. Yeah, it's the 65 TPT folks, the productions. They do an outstanding job. The in-house stuff for the Chiefs is really, really good. But there's that great clip. My favorite part of the whole thing is Charles Omenihu on the sideline after P. Ryan's catch and run for the first down, where he says, "I finally get to play in the Super Bowl. I finally get to play in the Super Bowl," because he didn't get to play in the one last year because he got hurt in the AFC Championship game. So I thought that was really cool. But anyway, like on defense, it's him and Jaden Hicks, who's a rookie. Those are the guys who are going to see, and I guess Najee Johnson too. Najee Johnson's part of this as well, who've never played in the Super Bowl before. I don't think Johnson got in the game. Certainly didn't get into it last year. And did he get into the one 2 years ago? I don't know that he did.
I think he did.
Let's double check that.
He was drafted in 21.
Right. And I did appear in 11 games in 2022. So maybe he did get some snaps in the. He did. He played 17 special teams.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
I remember seeing him on the field after the game.
So even him. So it is. It's Omenihu and it's Jordan Hicks, the guys who haven't experienced a Super Bowl before. Nico Remigio, the punt returner, Matt Araiza, the punter, haven't either. But like those are special teams guys. But I thought that list would be longer for the Eagles, but it's really not.
It's not.
There are a bunch of guys who weren't on the team last year on defense, like Zach Bond, the free agent pickup, the rookies in the secondary, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, just Jalen Carter's second year. It's Nolan Smith's second year. Momo Ajomo, it's his second year. Mekhi Becton's new to the team. He started with the Jets. He's going to play offensive line. Jahan Dotson's their third wide receiver. He's not going to get a ton of snaps, but he's never played in a Super Bowl. Braden Mann is a different punter than who the Eagles had 2 years ago. Sipos, who mistakenly punted that ball to. I think he was dinged up, and he didn't get a lot on that punt to Kadarius Toney for that famous punt return. But really, it was interesting to me how many Eagles have played in a Super Bowl. So typically, you would look at the Chiefs and say, "Man, they got a big game advantage." And all told, like if you add up conference championship games and divisional round games and wild card games, and you include the guys who have been a part of this from the beginning, you include a Chris Jones and a Patrick Mahomes and a Travis Kelce, then the experience factor is very much weighted in the Chiefs' favor. But if it's just, these guys are going to be, the Chiefs are going to treat the Super Bowl like any other game. They know how to do this. They know how to handle Super Bowl week. They know how to handle the crucible and the attention, and they know how to treat Sunday like just another game day, whereas their opponent might not. It's not necessarily true for this Eagles team. They got a bunch of guys who know how to go through it too. That's why I think it's just the intangible stuff may not be as important as the tangible stuff is come Sunday. And again, the most important tangible thing must just end up being one team has Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, the other doesn't. It's been good enough for the Chiefs a lot of times. Maybe it'll be good enough again on Sunday. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and talk a little bit about some college hoops tonight as KU takes on Iowa State at Allen Fieldhouse. Coming up next on 580 Sports Talk. 546 on 580 Sports Talk. Coming down the home stretch of today's program. Jeff Mitty's show coming up after we're done. K-State women's basketball coaches show at 6 o'clock. No Chiefs Kingdom tonight. There will be one next Monday, win or lose in New Orleans in Super Bowl 59, the last Chiefs Kingdom show of the year. You'll get your fill of Mitch. We never get our fill of Mitch Holthus, but you'll get your requisite Mitch Holthus on Thursday when he joins us from New Orleans on his usual day on which he visits us here on 580 Sports Talk. We've got more great Chiefs guests to come this week. Chiefs-related guests, NFL-related guests. Jesse Newell, the Kansas City Star, Chiefs beat writer for the Star, is going to join us on tomorrow's show at 3:35. So hope you will join us for that. Tonight, Kansas, Iowa State, Allen Fieldhouse, big Monday, 8 o'clock, big game for both of these teams. And both of them, again, just not playing very good basketball. We talked earlier about what K-State has done the last 3 weeks per the Torvik ratings, which they're like the Ken Palm rankings, but they're free, essentially, and they're a little easier to separate out, play with, and show different starting points and finishing points. The Torvik numbers show both KU and Iowa State is a little middling by their standards the last 3 weeks. Both teams are 3-3 in their last 6. Iowa State's 26th in the Torvik rankings during that time. KU's 29th. I expect both teams to play with their hair on fire. I expect this to be a desperation kind of game. Kind of expect Iowa State to win because I think at the end of the day, these kinds of games where you've got two teams that need a win, need it. I lean toward the tougher team. And I don't mean necessarily the physically tougher team, though I think Iowa State is that. I mean the mentally tougher team. And I think Iowa State is that too. Talk about teams that reflect the attitude of their best players. I think Iowa State's got that underdog mentality from guys like Taman Lipsey and Curtis Jones, who are overlooked and under-recruited. Curtis Jones was like the 4th best player at Buffalo in the MAC. And then he comes to Iowa State. He might win Big 12 Player of the Year this year. He's on the short list. He's going to be first team all Big 12, I think. He certainly would be at the midway point if you cast your ballot for that midseason team. That's where he'd be. I think they have that mentality about them, and I think KU does not have that mentality. I think Iowa State are mentality monsters, and I think KU are mentality mice. And I think you'll see the difference tonight. I really do. Unless Iowa State comes out and shoots like 7 of 30 from 3. It is a make or miss game at the end of the day, after all. Like, would I be surprised if KU won? No. Would I be surprised they put forward a really good 40 minutes? No. We've seen them respond before. I just don't know. I don't feel confident saying that's in the DNA of these Jayhawks.
I've got a number for you.
Let's hear it.
A stat. Kansas is 37-0 in the Bill Self era on Big Monday at Allen Fieldhouse.
That's
something big to
that's unbelievable trend, right?
Yes. So you got to live up to that with this team. This team has to live up to that. That's a hard thing to do.
It is. It absolutely is. That is a great point. KU favored by 3 per the folks at Prairie Band Casino in Mayetta. KU a 3-point favorite. The total 147.5. See what the Torvik prediction is tonight
on that.
Kansas is a 3-point favorite in Torvik as well, and Torvik would have that going under. I like the under 2. I think Torvik's projected score 73-70 Kansas.
Also, we need to keep track of this tonight. KU is 4-1 when Flory Badunga plays 20 or more points in their
minutes.
That's what I meant. Minutes.
Yeah,
and 2-3 when he plays less than 20.
Well, he played 16 minutes on Saturday. I was a little surprised he didn't get back in the game. I thought they really could have used his rim protection because Baylor was getting whatever they wanted on offense.
That's in 10 league games so far.
I think that I think there are some things that I like about this matchup for KU, and certainly getting the version of Zeke Mayo that shows up every time KU wears the home jersey should help a lot, or plays at Allen Fieldhouse. I think getting that version of Zeke Mayo helps them a lot. Could they win? Absolutely. My pick is Iowa State. I think they're tougher. I think at the end of the day, toughness wins games like this. And I do not think this is a tough Bill Self team. I think this is one of the least tough Bill Self teams that there has ever been. And they got 40 minutes to prove me wrong tonight. I think I'm going to be in the building. If I'm there tonight, you'll know because there will be live reaction on the 580 Sports Talk X feed. May as well call it X now. That place ain't Twitter. I mean, I remember what Twitter was. That place ain't Twitter anymore. So I'll just call it X. It's fine. I'm not posting there personally anymore.
The cesspool that is X.
Yes, you can follow X, the Everything app. Everything happens on X. Do your taxes on X. Do your banking with X. You can follow our account there, 580 Sports Talk. And you can also, if I am there, I will do a live instant reaction on the YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk. And you can stay up late and join me for that. But right now, we'll take a time out, come back, and wrap up 580 Sports Talk after this. Time to wrap up this edition of 580 Sports Talk with a final word. Spencer Dupuis, lead us off. Give us the final word for today.
Washburn basketball is on the biggest heater ever. Like, you need to go to Lee Arena and watch a basketball game.
Yeah, you do.
I haven't been. I've been here for 13 months now, coming up in a week, 13 months. And went Saturday for the first time. Not only is the environment great, but like the basketball is great. And it's a Division II school, and you don't expect the environment to be like it was, but that was a pretty fun environment. And they do this thing where they turn the lights down, and then you put your flashlight on your phone.
Yeah.
And I love it. I'm going to have to go to another game this year.
Their next home game happens to be this coming Saturday against Central Missouri. They'll go. The number one team in the country will go for 22-0. Women playing good ball too. They beat Kearney on Saturday as well. Final word for me. Speaking of playing good basketball, Kansas State's on the right path, and it may be a path that ultimately is dug too deep, if I can mix metaphors, for them to climb out of the hole that they created for themselves and reach the NCAA tournament. But right now, there aren't many teams in America playing better than Jerome Tang's Kansas State Wildcats. And they're playing that way because they found an identity, because they're all pulling the rope in the same direction, because Jerome Tang has learned to trust his point guard. And it took longer to trust Doug McDaniel than it took to trust Marquise Noel. And I think both Tang and McDaniel probably share a little bit of responsibility and a little bit of blame for it taking as long as it did to get that relationship right. But there's no doubt now everybody's singing from the same hymnal. And what it looks like is a team that is playing with confidence, that is playing with joy, that went to Ames where nobody had won for 29 consecutive games and didn't just win, but rolled, cruised, sent people home early. That's the K-State team we thought we were going to see this season. And frankly, that's better than the K-State team that I thought that we could see this season. Jerome Tang's vision ultimately starting to be realized. And if K-State goes and wins on Tuesday night, they keep putting one foot in front of the other. They go win in Tempe tomorrow night. Well, that would be what is called a winning streak. And they have, in fact, happened before. That'll do it for 580 Sports Talk today. Lots of great Super Bowl talk coming tomorrow, including Jesse Newell from the Kansas City Star. Also, Michael Swain of Fog.net will join us for Jayhawk Weekly. Hope you will join us for the show tomorrow from 3 to 6. Jeff Mini Show's next. Until tomorrow, for Spencer Dupuis, I'm Dan Lucero, and this was 580 Sports Talk. Good night.